Number 10. King Cadaver. We kicked this list off with one of the earliest villains in the comics, making his first steps in Jungle Action issue 10. King Cadaver was this bug-eyed dude created by radiation exposure. He could control your mind and cause a great amount of physical pain at the same time. Now, he didn't get up to much in the comics until recently in Black Panther 2019 issue 1. King Cadaver returned, but he was a little cooler this time around. There was this new CEO in town going by the name of Mr. Kazaji. Wakanda found a new chief of mining and operations were running smoothly. Better than ever, actually. He quadrupled the production of vibranium by using these proton excavators. Now, it started off great until these natural disasters began to occur. And then Mr. Kachazi kidnapped Queen Mother Ramonda as hostage, and his true self was revealed. And after a beatdown from Black Panther, King Cadaver still managed to somehow escape. Number 9. Man-Ape. AKA M'Baku, Man-Ape is one of the most powerful individuals in Wakanda. His super strength comes from a magical ritual of transference with the sacred white gorilla. Now he's able to easily bench press 2 tons. Winston Duke also brought the character M'Baku to life in 2018's Black Panther as well. But M'Baku made his first appearance in Avengers issue 62. He was born and raised in the Jabari village in Wakanda. The Black Panther outlawed the rival white gorilla cult from Wakanda, and the Panther cult was now the dominant one. So M'Baku killed one of the rare white gorillas living in the jungles near their home, and if that wasn't bad enough, he continued to bathe in the gorilla's blood, and then he ate the flesh, which in turn conferred its strength upon M'Baku. Now, when Black Panther returned from assisting the Avengers, this dude was now running the show. Going by Man-Ape, he gladly challenged T'Chaka for his right to rule. His goal was to get rid of these technological advances and go back to the primal ways. Man-Ape joined the 7th incarnation of the Masters of Evil, gathered by the Crimson Cowl Justine Hammer, and in Black Panther Volume 5, Issue 4, Man-Ape was murdered after he got the life sucked out of him by Morlun. But he later returned from the dead in Black Panther Long Live the King, Issue 3, thanks to Baron Macabre and a good old ritual. Number 8. Okay, so about that guy who sucked the life out of Man-Ape, what's that about? Let's talk about him for a bit. Morlun made his shadowy debut in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, Issue 30. He actually once ripped Peter's eyeball out and then ate it. He's been alive for centuries. Now, things get heated when the crocodile cult resurrected Morlun in order to devour the Black Panther totem to weaken Wakanda. Because if you can't beat him, just eat him. Okay. So Morlun started with Man-Ape, but was defeated by the new Black Panther, Shuri, who I'm hoping also takes over on the big screen. Morlun wasn't just defeated by Shuri, but with the help of a witch doctor, she was able to send Morlun into limbo, where he would then just fight these giant hordes of death, literal death. Number 7. T'Challa. We shipped over to an alternate reality, Earth 2301 that is, where the sister of T'Challa was brutally beaten by her brother when it came to the succession of the throne. She was hurt, physically and now emotionally, so much so that she left Wakanda. She left her home in hopes of finding a new magical power to master so that she could defeat her brother. Now, she found that magical power in the land of Latveria, where she took a master class or two from its ruler, Dr. Victor Von Doom. She trained under him but held back the entire time on purpose. She wanted to wait until the right moment, and then she took him out, stole his armor, and assumed the mantle of ruler of Latveria. Now, this version of Doom is extremely powerful. She carries with her a double-edged broadsword as a primary weapon that channels her power. Pretty badass. Number 6. Reverend Akebe. He made his first appearance in Black Panther Volume 3, Issue 3. It was a rather tragic start for this guy. Reverend Akebe was once a peaceful farmer living with his family in Gudaza. Now, things took a horrible turn when rebel guerrillas from the country Ujanka were forced onto his farm. The guerrillas took his wife, stabbed him over 30 times, and then just left him for death. Akabe was driven mad. He needed revenge at this point. His entire life was just shattered, so he resorted to the lowest form of revenge. Literally, he made a deal with the devil, Mephisto, who at this point was craving Black Panther's soul, so it all kind of worked out well. Akabe ended up in charge of Wakanda when T'Challa was taken into Mephisto's realm in Black Panther Volume 3, and Ramonda, Black Panther's stepmother, was actually on board with this entire operation. The two of them wanted to run the show upstairs, so they forced T'Challa to return to the United States. Akabe is extremely gifted when it comes to ventriloquism, believe it or not. A ventriloquist who deals with the devil. What could go wrong? Number 5. White Wolf. In the after credit scene for Black Panther, we saw Bucky Barnes awaken, and this time around, he wasn't in punch mode. He was healed up, given a new vibranium upgrade of an arm, and was referred to as the White Wolf. But he made his first debut in Black Panther Volume 3, Issue 4 in the late 90s. White Wolf wasn't from Wakanda initially. He actually arrived being the sole survivor of a plane crash near Wakanda, so they adopted the young boy named Hunter. Now, he was raised as the adoptive brother of Black Panther, only he wasn't next in line, so he got a little jealous. More than fair, as one would. So Hunter did the best he could in assisting Wakanda until eventually he was appointed as leader of the Wakandan secret police, the Hatut Zaraze. With this, he received vibranium microwave mesh, so bullets aren't exactly a concern anymore. Cloaking technology helps sneak around behind the king's back, and energy dampening boots allow the White Wolf to run across water or land on his feet after falling from high above. Like a cat. He was soon known as White Wolf, but when T'Challa took over as king after T'Chaka's assassination, he disbanded the brutal Hatut Zaraze. So all these mercenaries and the White Wolf needed a place to go. They needed a purpose. And most of all, they wanted revenge on the man who exiled them in the first place, Black Panther. Number 4, Ulysses Klaue. Played by the wonderful Andy Serkis in the MCU, also a villain we need more of, Ulysses Klaue made his first debut in Fantastic Four issue 53. He's the son of war criminal Colonel Fritz Klaue, and after the war he moved back to Belgium, changed his name to Klaue with a W, a little cooler, and he raised his son, telling him stories of Wakanda. That son grew up and became a physicist working in the field of applied sonics at the Technical University at Delft. He figured out how to convert sound waves into a physical mass, but the missing key component to do so lied within Wakanda's vibranium. So he and a group of mercenaries bought intel from Hydra, broke into Wakanda to cause some chaos. Klaue attempted to kill both King T'Chaka and his son T'Challa, but the king used his body as a shield to guard the young boy. His right arm didn't make it out alive, but that's when his brain came to save the day. He got an arm upgrade as we saw in the MCU, but in the comics he ended up trapped inside of it at one point. He was transformed into literal sound. So never say never with Klaue returning to the MCU. Number 3, Tatu. Initially a student at the Wakandan Academy, Tatu joined Marvel Comics with Black Panther Volume 6. He left in search for knowledge beyond the physical realm, and sometimes that gets you in a little bit of a pickle. He laid low in the Wakandan wilderness, and when he returned, he had the ability to manipulate nature. While abroad, Tatu gathered a group of rebels called the People and worked alongside Zenzi and the Ugandan army in hopes to one day overthrow the Black Panther. Tatu's powers are beyond just controlling plants. In Black Panther Volume 7, Issue 19, Tatu demonstrated the ability to open portals from the past and present to transport people through space and time. He also wears 2 spiked wooden rings on his shoulders. Being made of natural resources, he can make the spikes grow in length and attack people. A one-on-one with Groot would get pretty messy, I imagine. Number 2, Zenzi. Making her first appearance in Black Panther Volume 6, Issue 1, Zenzi can enhance and bring to light people's deepest emotions. She can change your whole agenda up just like that. Like in Issue 2 of Volume 6, Zenzi is about to be killed by Killmonger's troops, but instead she made them attack each other and wipe each other out, which is great. She quickly became the leader of the Ugandan army, where she allied herself with Tatu, head of the People, like I just talked about. She would use her abilities to start riots, and when Black Panther knocked her into a coma, she still didn't give up the fight days later when she woke up. Not even a coma can keep Zenzi down. How amazing is that? I would hate to mess with an empathic manipulator. I don't want people to read my mind or see my emotions deep down. Leave my inner monologues alone. You have your tough guy voice on, and then all of a sudden you're singing show tunes and releasing prisoners. What a power. And finally, number 1, Killmonger. Eric Killmonger, played by the wickedly talented Michael B. Jordan in Marvel Studios' Black Panther, is one of the best villains in the MCU thus far. I'm really hoping we get him back somehow in the sequel. I think he's rumored to actually take over as Black Panther, so this could be something. He made his first appearance in Jungle Action Volume 2, Issue 6. He considers himself a fierce and cunning warrior, far greater than that of T'Challa. He grew up in Wakanda with the birth name Jadaka, and as a child, when Ulysses Klaue invaded the country for vibranium, his family was wiped out after Klaue's plans got messy. Jadaka, the sole survivor, was taken captive by Klaue back to America, where he luckily escaped his grasp, but he still had no way of getting home. So he adapted. He changed his name to Eric Killmonger, moved to Harlem, earned a PhD in engineering, and became a professor at MIT. There he saw Wakanda's King T'Challa and hitched a ride back to the motherland, only he didn't intend to settle and live his days out as a peaceful resident. He took what he learned in America and planned to use it against the Black Panther back home and topple his empire.
Ares was the one to actually wound Darkseid in the DCEU in Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League. Of course, this was back before Darkseid was calling himself Darkseid, back when he was Uaxis, and back when he was less powerful. But he was still a version of Darkseid, albeit a younger one, and Ares still beat him fair and square in a one-on-one combat. In fact, he beat him so badly that he was forced to retreat, and eventually his armies fell and the whole invasion was forced to retreat as well as a result of his defeat. Now, it is important to note that in our flashback to this moment, we also see that Darkseid was likely weakened not just by Ares, but by the armies of Earth prior to Ares' attack on him. So yeah, was kinda one-on-one, but before that it was like a bunch bunch of people on one. However, Ares is also the god of war, so when going toe to toe with him, facing armies as well is just kinda the norm. Number 9. Solaris. Solaris might stand a chance against Darkseid considering he's literally just a sentient sun. Typically his beef is with Superman, but if there were a reason for Solaris to take on Darkseid, I'm sure he'd stand a pretty good chance of beating him in a fight. It would be his intense radiation and laser beams versus Darkseid's Omega beams. Considering that Solaris is also an adaptable villain who can scan and process an attack and then use that information to create a powerful defense against it, this also means there are very few attacks that happen to be powerful enough to destroy him, unless you can like destroy him outright with that first attack. This is also why Solaris makes such a great recurring villain. Maybe Darkseid would beat him even the first time around, but Solaris would likely still survive because he's just so resilient and indestructible, and he'd likely return years later for a rematch. And before we move on to this next spot, if you are enjoying this list and you want more lists like it, be sure to show us some love by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Necron. Necron is the embodiment of death, an extra-dimensional being who often seeks to conquer the universe. He has attempted to do so a few times and failed, but during Blackest Night we saw him come fairly close to accomplishing his goal. If not for the presence of the White Lantern, he would have likely succeeded. During that event we also saw Necron's power level boosted, turning him into a massive threat to not just Earth but all of the universe. The other thing is that Necron is a constant and as such can't really be permanently killed at any point. As long as death exists, he technically must exist as well. Even without the boost to his power levels that we saw in Blackest Night, Necron has still managed to take hits from the Anti-Monitor without so much as flinching. That's just how untouchable he is. Number 7. Superboy Prime. Just because Superman can't take Darkseid alone, it doesn't mean that another version of the character couldn't stand a fighting chance. Superboy Prime, or Superman Prime as he is often referred to now, might not have the physical strength, but it could be possible that he could manipulate reality to make Darkseid weaker, or even cause him to just not exist. How? With just a punch. There was a time in the comics where Superboy Prime was shown to be so strong that he punched reality, splintering it and in essence reshaping it. If Superboy Prime has the power to punch retcons into existence, what can't he do? Number 6. Volthoom. Volthoom is the very first Lantern who, after receiving the very first Lantern ring from the Guardians of the Universe, turned dark, losing control of all the emotions within himself. Or maybe he was a little dark even before that. He killed millions of people and enjoys sowing discord and creating chaos. At one point he also almost succeeded in taking hold of the universe and reshaping it in his own image. It took the collective power of Parallax Sinestro, Necron, and a Black Lantern Hal Jordan to stop him. He can warp reality, manipulate time, and has increased durability. He's taken on an army of Black Lanterns all by himself and at one point was powerful enough to hold the universe in his hand. I'm pretty sure if there is anyone who could take on Darkseid solo, it would be Volthoom. Number 5. Starro the Conqueror. Starro is a frightening enemy. Not only is there the potential for Starro to simply take hold of Darkseid and use him as a pawn, which we have actually seen pictured in the Future State Justice League series in issue 1, but you can have a Starro that could be up to thousands of miles across. Their sizes greatly vary, meaning that you could have a Starro simply capable of crushing Darkseid if it wanted to. Though honestly, taking his mind hostage and using him as a weapon for its own purpose is a far more terrifying prospect. Not just for our heroes, but I imagine for Darkseid as well. Number 4. The Darkest Night. I never thought I'd consider Batman Who Laughs to be such a powerful threat, but after he took the brain of final Bruce Wayne, who basically had the powers of Dr. Manhattan, he became one of the most powerful beings in the universe. True, he was defeated by Wonder Woman, but if we can imagine a scenario outside of Dark Knight's death metal, where with his newly acquired power he squared off with Darkseid, it would be easy to see how he could win against that villain. With Dr. Manhattan's abilities, there would be almost no feat of power too great for him to accomplish. In his Darkest Night form, the Batman Who Laughs became invulnerable and immortal, which would also make it very hard for Darkseid to not only wound him, but defeat him as well. Number 3. Anti-Monitor. Many consider the Anti-Monitor to be one of DC's greatest threats. It usually comes down to either Anti-Monitor or Darkseid when you ask fans who is the most powerful and fearsome antagonist of the DC universe. The thing with Anti-Monitor is most of his stories have included threatening not just multiple worlds, but entire multiverses. So compared to Darkseid, he's generally on another scale. And not just in terms of threats and power, but also just in terms of actual size. Darkseid is typically shown shown as being an intimidating height, but only really in comparison to other superpowered beings and humans. He's like anywhere from a few feet taller to double their size. Anti-Monitor, on the other hand, is generally depicted as being hundreds of feet tall. So unless we are giving Darkseid a major boost to his size, Anti-Monitor could just squish him like a bug. Of course, we did give Darkseid a major boost to his size when the two fought, but even then Darkseid ended up dying. Of course, it wasn't Anti-Monitor who caused his apparent death, but it still happened while they were fighting, so hey, I'm counting it. Number 2. Perpetua. Perpetua is also likely a character who could take Darkseid, considering that she has destroyed entire alternate Earths before and even managed to break the Source Wall. Pretty impressive and terrifying stuff. Perpetua, for those who don't know, is an agent of the Source who went rogue. Initially, she was on a mission of creation, but instead decided to turn to the side of chaos and destruction, with a plan to remake the multiverse in her own image. Some might think that Perpetua isn't so scary or strong, considering she has only been shown to destroy a single universe at a time. But in reality, when we saw her wreaking havoc in Death Metal, she was not yet back to her full strength. If Perpetua was back at her max strength of power, there's no telling just how much destruction she could bring about within an instant. Number 1. Trigon. In the animated film Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, we saw just what Trigon was capable of in the fight against Darkseid. And I know what you're thinking, how is Trigon more powerful than Perpetua, Amanda? But I'm giving this one to him because of this fight. Raven accidentally lost control of Trigon and set him loose on Apocalypse. Trigon in the film at least was shown to be strong enough to match Darkseid in power, if not beat him. Initially, that's because Trigon possessed Superman, using him as a host to fight Darkseid, but afterwards Raven and Constantine team up to give Trigon back his own body, realizing that he is the key to defeating Darkseid, giving them enough time to escape back to Earth and enact Cyborg's plan to destroy Apocalypse. When Trigon gets his body back, he poses a very real threat to Darkseid, to the point that at one point Darkseid attempts to basically run away, but Trigon does not let him. As Apocalypse is destroyed, so are both of the villains, as Trigon holds Darkseid back, preventing him from fleeing, which I love. I love that they fight and then Darkseid's like, I'm getting out of here, and Trigon's like, oh no, we're going together.
Starting us off in at number 10, Terrax. Originally known as Tyros, he started as a dictator of Landlac in a solar system around 80,000 light years from Earth. He maintained control using his power over rock. In essence, this guy was a more advanced earthbender, being able to animate figures out of stone that would patrol the kingdom, maintaining his order and rule. However, this wouldn't last forever, since Galactus was seeking a new herald to guide him towards his next dinner buffet. Galactus had also finally learned that you shouldn't have good guys find you worlds to destroy. So when the Fantastic Four asked Galactus for help against the Sphinx, his only condition to help was if the Fantastic Four subdued Tyros for him. They did, and Tyros was exposed to the cosmic power of Galactus and turned him into Terrax the Tamer. His control over stone was improved tenfold, and he could nearly control a whole planet of stone at once. In addition to this, he was granted the Cosmic Axe, which was capable of generating waves of cosmic force. Terrax was nuts, even beginning to wipe out worlds before Galactus got there, even at times defying Galactus' wishes, which is pretty ballsy if you ask me. I mean, like, that's what you get for hiring a bad guy though, I guess.
Number 9. Umar. Umar is the sister of Dormammu and is basically on a similar level to her brother. She has a great knowledge of magical lore which she can use to do a vast number of things. She also is capable of teleportation and time travel. And you know how I feel about teleporters, they are pretty OP in my opinion. Same basically with any person, hero or villain who can manipulate time. Umar often allies herself with her brother even though he hasn't always treated her great. I don't think Dormammu will be winning any Brother of the Year awards is all I'm saying. She has also been shown to be more powerful than Doctor Strange even, on occasion. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list as much as I love all of the things that are cosmic, cosmic things, they're so great, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. I think that was a sentence that made sense.
And at 8, Ego. Introduced in Thor number 132 in 1966, Ego was created when a mysterious being known as the Stranger visited his home star in order to conduct an experiment. A scientist by the name of Egros started work on a way to save his race from the nova that experiment had left inevitable. The night of the explosion, Egros had his race move into the bunkers he had set up at the planet's core, but the star exploded sooner than they had planned. So in an attempt to save his own life, he tried to reach the underground vault, but failed. However, Egros was merged with every living thing destroyed by that sun, including his people. This created Ego, the living planet. Considering how this guy is literally a living planet, I think it's safe to say why he's on this list, especially when he was able to hold his own against Galactus. Yeah, a few months after a battle with Thor, Galactus discovered Ego and instantly attacked. Understandably. Ego in his defense created a shield of solid clouds and began to fight back, attempting to strangle Galactus with tentacles. I feel like I've seen that video before. Either way, anyone able to hold their own against Galactus is well deserving to be on this list.
Number 7. Dormammu. Dormammu recently actually came out on top against Ego in a battle, and in certain conditions possesses limitless power. Dormammu is part mystical and part cosmic in terms of what kind of villain he is, but make no mistake that he is not out of his element in outer space at all. Dormammu has battled against Odin and has even threatened to end the Celestials before, who are like super cosmic, claiming that he will be the one to destroy the extremely powerful beings. I think we're still waiting for that to happen, but I believe. Not only has Dormammu threatened the existence of Earth before, like we saw in the MCU, but in the comics he has threatened the entire universe and even entire reality of Earth 616 before. So that's the kind of level that he's generally on. There's like other villains, and then there's Dormammu.
And at 6, Michael Korvac. Being first introduced in Giant Size Defenders number 3 in 1975, Michael Korvac's father was killed due to events surrounding his birth in 2977. He was raised by his mother, but when the solar system he lived in on Earth 691 and its colonies became the target for the Brotherhood of Badoon, Michael became a traitor and helped the Brotherhood. However, after a few moments of hesitation later on, he was cut in half and fused with his computer by the Brotherhood, turning him into basically a cyborg. But this seemed to do more harm than good for the Brotherhood, since now Korvac was dead set on killing those who did this to him, at least until the Grandmaster teleported him to battle Doctor Strange and the Defenders. Korvac intentionally lost the battle and instead siphoned some of the Grandmaster's power using his new cybernetic abilities, making him even more powerful than before. Eventually, this guy ended up impersonating Kang the Conqueror and the Watcher, and with his ability to siphon power from others, this makes him one of the scariest villains in the Marvel Universe, at least if he was smart about it and didn't go and get himself killed multiple times.
Number 5. The Builders. The Builders ended up being an insanely massive threat when they first showed up on the scene. They were destroyers of worlds, flying around, completely wiping out all life on planets, and threatening some of the greatest empires in the cosmos. Although, originally they were kind of more like creators of life and planets, but I digress. In order to defeat the Builders, thought to be the oldest race of beings in the universe, Earth's heroes were compelled to join forces with the galaxy's other superpowers, including the Shi'ar Empire, the Kree, the Skrulls, Spartax, and more. It took an intergalactic army to even stand a chance against the Builders, and even then, that chance initially seemed pretty bleak, pretty slim. Captain Universe, who was said to have created the Builders, joined the fight against them, and eventually all worlds rose up and united, and were able to defeat them. Later on, an even greater cosmic threat, the Beyonders, who we really need to talk about on a part 2 for this list actually, destroyed the Builders. The Beyonders are pretty crazy.
Getting close to the end, and in number 4, Amatsu Mikaboshi. To the Shinto religion in Japan, Amatsu Mikaboshi is the god of evil, chaos, and the stars, a primordial being who was imprisoned in the Shinto underworld, known as Yomi, for all eternity. Fun. First introduced in Thor Blood Oath number 6 in 2006, this guy is an absolute beast. Just look at him. This thing is my sleep paralysis demon. Mikaboshi fought against the Demogorge for control of literally the universe, and that's not even a joke. This guy was going to wipe out an entire race of interdimensional beings known as the Kami, just to get a sword known as the Grass Cutter. Yeah, the Grass Cutter was a sword of such great power, it apparently was worth wiping out an entire race of people. Dude, just get a lawnmower. Mikaboshi existed before the universe did, before the Big Bang, back when time didn't exist and when the universe was only darkness. He can take on anyone from Thor to even Olympian gods by using his extreme arsenal of powers like shape-shifting, bending matter, mystical energy blasts, you name it, this guy can probably do it, including absorbing the entire multiverse, because he nearly did that as well. He was less than 2% away, actually. So close.
Number 3, Magus. Magus is the evil version of Adam Warlock, and we all know how powerful Adam Warlock is. Magus, being his dark equivalent, is extremely dangerous and also has a willing army at his disposal in his own church that he created, the Universal Church of Truth, which isn't really as nice as it sounds at all. They would harshly purify any planets who refused to accept their offer to join them, exterminating all who resisted. Pretty awful stuff. Being that Magus is the negative side of Adam Warlock, he possesses all all of his abilities and powers.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Thanos. I'm sure we all know about the Mad Titan, especially thanks to the MCU. But while Thanos' MCU counterpart was portrayed as a man wanting to help a dying universe, at least kind of, the comic version of Thanos had a much simpler objective: impress Death! Thanos is the definition of insane, doing whatever it takes to impress Death and gain her affection, and this coupled with an insatiable hunger for power and control makes him quite the dom. From the Cosmic Cube to the Infinity Gems, Thanos' lust for power is never satiated, but even so, he doesn't want to destroy everything. I guess since if he did, there would be nothing left to rule, and no more death to impress his mistress. This causes him to even at times join forces with heroes when there's a bigger threat than himself, teaming up with Adam Warlock to stop Magus and the Goddess, and teaming up with the Guardians to stop the invasion of the Cancerverse, just to name a couple. So while he could kill most of us in a snap, at least we know some of us would survive, so that he could then dom us.
Number 1. Galactus. Galactus is obviously one of the greatest and most constant cosmic threats that the universe faces. He is a devourer of worlds whose bottomless hunger is what makes him such a feared antagonist, even though really Galactus himself is generally pretty neutral without his hunger. In fact, he's even been a force of good on a few occasions. Still, whichever side he's on at the time, which let's be honest, usually is considered to be the more villainous side simply because he needs to destroy worlds to continue surviving, he is not a villain you'd want to come up against, as not only do you have to face him, a massive cosmic giant wielding the extraordinary power cosmic, but you also usually have to deal with his heralds, who themselves can be a lot to handle, and also have a little bit of power cosmic.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have the Absorbing Man. Carl Crusher Creel already sounds intimidating enough. The Absorbing Man made his comic book debut back in Journey into Mystery issue 114. He was raised in the Bronx, and at a young age his mother passed away, and his father certainly wasn't there for him after. He was not a role model as well, to say the least. So sadly, Carl turned to the life of crime in order to pay the bills. And while he was spending time in the gym, he realized he was actually a pretty great boxer. He did so well that he became known as Crusher Creel, but that life of crime was still sprinkled in there, and then he was recruited as an enforcer for the Owl's Men. He eventually got caught and locked up, but this is when things start going a little bit fun in a way. See, Loki, Loki's a god of mischief, he added this rare Asgardian herb to Carl's drinking water in hopes that he would get this new ability to take down Thor. Now, this new ability made him the Absorbing Man, a guy who could absorb the physical properties of anybody that he came into contact with. His first battle was with Thor, and then when he came back to Earth, he went toe-to-toe with the Hulk. I'd love an Absorbing Man in the MCU, honestly. I feel like I could watch 2 movies with Carl just fist-bumping all of our Avengers and causing chaos, taking powers, of course. And before we go on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and toss this video a thumbs up, that would be great because those likes do wonders for our page. You guys are the best, thank you so much. Now back to some more Hulk villains. Number 9, Speed Freak. Making his first debut in Incredible Hulk issue 388, Speed Freak aka Joss Shapp was a criminal who at one point got addicted to the substance called Snap. Oh snap. This plus the fact that he stole a super suit from an inventor sounds like a perfect supervillain origin story in the making. So Speed Freak had been hired by a man named Mr. Lang, and one of his first jobs was to attack a guy who had infected Mr. Lang's son. So Speed Freak went to fight it out, and while there, he had the misfortune of crossing paths with the Incredible Hulk, who tossed Speed Freak quite the distance. So his suit alone gives Speed Freak quite the advantage. It gives him the ability to hover above the ground, flying, literally being able to fly, and he also has arm-mounted adamantium cutting blades, so he might be a bit too crazy for the MCU, at least right now. Number 8, The Leader. Samuel Stearns, aka The Leader, made his first debut in Tales to Astonish, issue 62. He was working one night at a chemical research plant, and when he was moving canisters of waste material, one of the containers, bam, they broke open and then covered him in gamma radiation. Stearns survived just like Banner did, but it affected him in a different way. He went from being smart to becoming a genius, and his brain could absorb more and more information. It was his superpower. And it got to a point where his physical body started to mutate, so now he has this giant green brain head. I mean, he clearly looks like a villain, and then he started to refer to himself as the Leader, using his intellect to become a criminal mastermind. He clashed with the other Gamma guy, Banner. In fact, he actually ruined Betty and Bruce's wedding. What a jerk. Number 7, Greg Gargoyle. He made his first comic book debut with Journey into Mystery issue 107. Greg Gargoyle, aka Dr. Paul Duval, was a young chemist working for a pharmaceutical company in Paris, and when he spilt a contaminated potion on his right hand, it started to turn into this stone-like material. Not like Medusa though, where where you're stone and immobile, Dr. Greg Gargoyle McGee was actually able to move whilst maintaining this stone form. So he looks scary and he actually can do some damage. But everything he touched turned into this stone stuff. And it's super scary to have this happen, but I can't help but chuckle at how human Greg is when this transformation happens. He's like, oh no, my hand. Oh no, my other hand. Shoot, what do I do? Oh no, my face. That's like when they said you shouldn't touch your face during COVID-19. I'm like, what do I do with my hands? How do I act normal? What have I been doing for 26 years? What's going on? So Greg has a few good ideas with this ability. He tossed a stone airplane at his enemies, so that's a cool thing he can do. And then in the Incredible Hulk issue 363, Greg uses his powers to take down the Hulk. It's not easy, but it sure makes it easier when the Hulk is literally stoned during the fight. Number 6, Nightmare. Making his first debut back in Strange Tales issue 110, Nightmare's origin remains a mystery and it's only known to few. He's both a conceptual entity, part of all of existence, just like eternity, and he's also a deity. So the guy's just trouble. He's just trouble. He was born in the Ever and I dimension, and he was seen as a cousin to the Dweller in Darkness. He knew Dweller's origins, he wanted no part in all that stuff. Nightmare has crossed paths with the Hulk many times. At one point, he caused the Hulk to have these hallucinations, and of course, he had nightmares for years, because his name's Nightmare. You get it. Even Betty Ross, Bruce's love, isn't safe from Nightmare. Nightmare once entered her mind and did horrible things to her while she was dreaming. He's kind of like Freddy Krueger, and seeing as WandaVision didn't want to bring in Nightmare when they had a good chance to, it's probably best if the Hulk and Betty never met him as well. Number 5, Ravage. Dr. Geoffrey Crawford was a professor of physics at Desert State University and was a mentor to Bruce Banner initially. See, Crawford was developing this teleportation device where point A would scan all of your DNA and then zoom, your DNA would end up on the other end. Sounds like nothing could ever go wrong at all in that thing. So Banner went back to Crawford in hopes that he could help him think of a solution for his big green alter ego problem. And then when Bruce got there, Crawford was in a wheelchair and he was suffering from a disease, but he still opted out to help Bruce with his problem. What a nice guy. Turns out Crawford wanted Bruce's DNA in hopes of curing his debilitating disease, but while testing out his theory, he warped to point B and then the DNA had bonded with him, creating this other type of Hulk called Ravage. And because Bruce tried to stop him during this, his DNA meshed together while he was angry, so you already know what that looks like. Number 4, Red Hulk. He made his first appearance in Incredible Hulk issue 1 as General Ross, but come the first issue of volume 2, Ross goes beast mode and becomes one of the Hulk's greatest threats of all time. Red Hulk was created using gamma radiation, like the Hulk, but what makes him more of a foe is the fact that he also has cosmic rays added to that already aggressive mix. So the Red Hulk, or Rolk, which is fun to say, doesn't get stronger the angrier he gets like Bruce. No, he actually gets hotter. Yeah, he gets so hot and then all of a sudden he turns into Ryan Gosling. No, like heat. He physically burns up, that's what I mean. So during one of the first run-ins with the Red Hulk, when the two Goliaths were scrapping it out, the sand around them melted because of this heat and turned into glass, which is pretty cool. More stuff to break too, which you gotta love if you're the Hulk. Number 3, Juggernaut. Kane Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Kane was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. Now this cave was actually home to the lost temple of Sidorak, so Kane grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol, which is a great idea if you've seen every movie. He read the inscription and possessed the power of the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, becoming a human Juggernaut. Then an explosion went off, poof, and the Juggernaut was trapped under the rubble and Xavier got out of dodge. Now after he dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village with the previous man who held the Juggernaut title, Gentaiko, in the mix as well. While it might be cool to see Juggernaut and the Hulk fight in live action, we also have to get the X-Men there first, and it doesn't seem like Marvel is in a rush to bring them in, as we saw from WandaVision. Hashtag Ralph Boner. In World War Hulk and X-Men issue 2, we see these two magnificent beasts go at it, and they're both pretty close in strength, but what makes Kane hard to fight is the fact that he can last some time without needed rest. His stamina is nuts. He can also summon his armor at any time, so that certainly comes in handy. Number 2, Wendigo. This next one comes from Canada, so we gotta keep an eye out for this one, Chris. We gotta keep our peepers open. Paul Cartier made his comic book debut in the Incredible Hulk issue 162. Yes, that's rhymed. The Wendigo is a result of an ancient curse from the elder gods of Canadian folklore, and it transforms anybody who eats human flesh into this massive fur-covered beast, so don't eat flesh. It's been referred to as an indestructible force of nature being made from the gods and all. Now this all began when two Canadian lads were in the wilderness hunting, and then when wolves attacked and wounded one of the men, he ended up passing away from the attack, and his buddy was really hungry. He was starving, so he kind of sort of had to eat his friend's skin to survive. Yuck, but also you have to, man, it's part of it. Thus turning him into this Wendigo. Now it took Wolverine's help for the Hulk to take the Wendigo down, and just the origin story alone for this guy, I don't think we'll be seeing humans eating other humans in the MCU anytime soon, or if we do, hopefully it's Marvel Zombies. Either way, I'm not ready for that yet. Number 1, the Maestro. I know that name sounds cool, but this guy is an absolute nightmare to be around. He is not a conductor of classical music, no. In the series Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect, we see this version of the Hulk way more weird than Smart Hulk dabbing. Yeah, even weirder than that. He made his first appearance in a vision in the Incredible Hulk Volume 2, issue 401, and Maestro was the main antagonist in the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect storyline. Now this story of course takes place about 100 or so years in the future after a nuclear war put the planet super close to extinction. Now this alternate future version of the Hulk, Maestro, had been absorbing all of the nuclear radiation this entire time, and he ended up becoming the strongest thing on the planet. Massive increases in strength and anger plus the brains of Banner made him arguably unstoppable. He's big, smart, strong, and a total nightmare to be around. I mean, maybe we could get some sort of future imperfect storyline, but I feel like it's way too dark for Disney. But hey, never say never.
Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. What a ride. This issue was released August 2012, and just the front cover is bloody goodness. What happened here was the X-Men put Wade into the Ravencroft Asylum in attempts to heal his insanity. The doctor just happened to be Psycho Man, of course, so he brainwashed Wade with plans to shut down all of his inner voices, which worked, but now these voices were replaced with voices that were encouraging him to, well, kill everybody in the Marvel Universe. Reed then gets left all rubbery and lifeless, and it's pretty dark overall. As far as X-Men villains go, this version of Wade was made a tad more intimidating than X-Men Origins Wolverine, just a tad. She was recruited by Charles and joined the team to save other original students from Krakoa. She was appointed leader after several years of work. In X-Men Apocalypse, we see her recruited as a horseman, but by the end of the movie, she betrays him and joins the X-Men. But as far as powerful X-Men villains, I can't not look for a reason to include Storm. She's Omega, and when she's on the wrong side of the fight, it can get messy. Coming in number 8, Wolverine. Wolverine has a rough past, so it's no surprise that he's gone down a few dark paths as well. In the movie Logan, for example, we see two Wolverines battle it out, and it's stressful, it's gory, and it's very upsetting the most. But I mean, that's Wolverines going at it, so it sounds about right. In the Age of Apocalypse storyline, Logan goes from being an X-Men to the Horseman of Death. Yeah, Apocalypse actually had Wolverine go against Sabretooth in order to see who would become the new Horseman. Wolverine came out on top, and Apocalypse restored the adamantium to his skeleton. Quite the deal if you ask me. To make matters worse, Apocalypse replaced Wolverine with a Skrull so the X-Men wouldn't even notice. So there's a few comics here that could blend nicely into the MCU, like Apocalypse replacing Wolverine with a Skrull. That is totally possible. With Ryan Reynolds confirming the next Deadpool would have included Logan, I doubt there isn't some sort of that coming with him for Deadpool 3. They're basically best friends in real life. Adam Sandler has like 14 of his friends every movie, so I'm holding out hope for Logan. Coming in number 7, Juggernaut. K. Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. When Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Kane was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. The cave was actually home to the lost temple of Cyttorak, so Kane grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol, read the inscription, and possessed the power of the crimson bands of Cyttorak, becoming a literal human Juggernaut. After he dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village, with the previous man who held the Juggernaut mantle, Jin Taiko, getting taken out as well. We've literally seen him rip Deadpool in half, and if he's coming over to the MCU, I hope Juggernaut will as well. Coming in number 6, Strife. Making his debut in New Mutants issue number 87, Strife was the clone of Nathan Summers, the son of Cyclops, and Madeline Pryor. He's a clone of Cable from the future. He has this high-tech armor, he's a telepathic and telekinetic mutant, and unlike Cable, who has to devote his psionic powers to ensure this techno-organic virus doesn't get his right side as well, Strife doesn't need to worry about that issue. Apocalypse wanted this child, he wanted to raise the clone himself, so down the road he could one day claim the body as his own. Coming number 5, Shadow King. Making his first appearance in X-Men 117, the Shadow King is a multiversal manifestation of the dark dark side of the human consciousness, spawned by the first nightmare. Amal Farouk was the leader of the underground syndicate located in the Thieves' Quarter of Cairo, Egypt. He's a powerful mutant who also happened to be a vessel for said Shadow King. Farouk was able to control everybody around him, and it's pretty terrifying when you think about it. He feeds on the shadows of your soul, so yeah, with Marvel now veering off to the cosmic side of things, we could see a Shadow King whenever the X-Men come into the picture. In the comics before World War II, Amal Farouk worked with Baron von Strucker to try and destabilize Britain's political structure. Even more terrifying. Coming in number 4, Mr. Sinister. Dr. Nathaniel Essex made his first debut in Uncanny X-Men 221. He's not that easy to forget though once you take a look at him. He's kind of terrifying, well, to say the least. He's obsessed with experimenting on mutants, and yes, that includes himself. He was obsessed with Darwin's theory of evolution, but felt like they were shackled by too many moral constraints. He couldn't even get funding from the Hellfire Club, so he had to get together a group that he named the Marauders, and got them to kidnap people off of the streets of London so that he could continue his experiments. Guy is pretty twisted when you think about it. He even tried to experiment on his own son, who just happened to be no longer alive. A villain who resurrects the dead? I mean, the MCU could probably use that right about now. Coming number 3, Mojo. Making his first debut in Longshot issue number 3, Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. We're getting close to these cosmic vibes with Loki's show on Disney+, so I don't think a live-action Mojo is far-fetched. The more viewers he gets for his interdimensional TV show, the more powerful that he becomes. So in 1992, the issue titled Mojo's Media Madness had this wild storyline where Mojo gets Rogue, Cyclops, Beast, and Wolverine to think that they are characters from The Wizard of Oz. I would sell my soul to see this show. I mean, for now, the comic will have to do. This takes place in X-Men issue number 10. Mojo is a unique villain. He's part of a race of spineless beings from a planet named after him called Mojo World, inside a pocket dimension called the Mojoverse. So this race of spineless beings were slowly going crazy over time because TV signals from another space-time continuum were scattered into their timelines. He's a powerful sorcerer, and we're not exactly sure just how far his magic can go, and I don't really want to find out, to be honest. Coming number 2, Onslaught. Making his first debut in X-Men issue number 15, Onslaught was a sentient psionic entity created from the minds of Charles Xavier and Magneto. That's pretty messed up. So when the X-Men were fighting the Acolytes, Wolverine hit Magneto, and then in return, Magneto ripped the adamantium from his bones, which, gotta say, I thought hangnails were bad. This sounds like an absolute nightmare. His healing factor had to work overtime for sure. Xavier shut down Magneto's mind, which made him catatonic, but during this moment, all of Magneto's lust for hate and violence leaked into Charles' consciousness, creating this new personality called Onslaught. He now obtained the ability to tap into the psychic resources of the astral plane, where he could then manipulate matter and energy. There's also a red Onslaught, but I'll save that for another time. Last but certainly not least, our number 1 spot, Apocalypse. Sabat Nur, making his first steps in Marvel graphic novel issue number 17, was born nearly 5,000 years ago at the edge of the Valley of the Kings in ancient Egypt. He was abandoned by his tribe because of the fact that he looked, well, different. He had the Avatar look going on, for lack of a better explanation. He later was raised by the nomads with the idea that only the strong survive, a tough way for a child to think and live. He actually was killed by agents of Ozymandias, but was later revived thanks to his mutant abilities. For example, his self-molecular manipulation allows for him to alter his physical form, and he's also a genius. Even before being modified by the celestial ship, Apocalypse was already living for thousands of years. All he has to do is enter a deep sleep. In the X-Men Apocalypse storyline, we see just how big and bad the guy can get though.
Number 10. Volcanica. Volcanica only appears in a few issues, but she is a pretty hot villain. Literally hot, that is. She rules the caverns of the rocky world beneath the Earth's crust. She first appears in issue 106 of Invincible, where she aims to make Doc Seismic her consort, turning him into a lava being and titling him the King of the Underworld. She and Doc Seismic then head out to try and conquer the surface world together. Their first battle ends with their retreat, but they at least got what they came for. Volcanica isn't just a lava elemental, but also rules the cavernous subterranean area of Earth, and all of its creatures that live there as well. Number 9. Monax. Monax is the son of Monster Girl and Zal Zaxel of Flaxen royalty. Zal was his mother and Monster Girl his father. Monster Girl and Zal conceived the child together while Amanda was in her male monster form. In case you were wondering how that worked. Monax came to Earth with the Flaxen Empire in an attempt to conquer it years after, in his dimension, Monster Girl and Robot had left. Not knowing that Monster Girl had a child with Zal and seeking to protect the peace that they had created during their time in the Flaxen Dimension, Robot, before they left, ordered all Zaxels and their relatives to be killed to prevent an uprising from ever happening. However, this obviously was not how that went down. Zal was killed, but Monax survived, returning to Earth to get his revenge on his father and on Robot for what they had done to him, the Zaxels, and the Flaxen Empire. And friends, if you are loving this list and you want more Invincible lists, more, let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Omnipotus. Omnipotus was a global level threat that took all of Earth's heroes teaming up to defeat. Omnipotus came from another world and dimension where he had drained his home of all of its energy. Omnipotus came to Earth to feed on more energy to give him even more power. He almost succeeded too, but in the end, Black Samson awoke, rejuvenated, and restored. With his powers returned and at a higher level than previous due to his time spent comatose, Black Samson pushed Omnipotus back through his warp gate, sending him back from whence he came, and then destroyed his warp key so that Omnipotus could never return. However, Omnipotus would later return as a villain and fight Invincible and Dinosaurus. Dinosaurus would defeat him and ultimately destroy him. Omnipotus kinda reminds me of Marvel's Galactus. Does anyone else get that vibe? Number 7, Anissa. Initially, Anissa is an ally of the Viltrumite Empire, and because of that reason is an enemy of Invincible and of Earth. She initially shows up and attempts to convince Mark to join the Empire and help them to conquer Earth. Mark, however, is not really interested in this plan and refuses to help her or the Viltrumite Empire. Later on, Anissa returns with Thrag, or Throg, depending on how you want to say it, and attempts to live in secret on Earth to help the Viltrumites rebuild their population by mating with humans. However, Anissa cannot find a suitable mate and also shares that she never really wanted to procreate to begin with. She assists in defeating Throg when she finds out that Omni-Man is the true heir to the Viltrumite Empire, but she also ends up seeing Mark as a potential mate, despite the fact that Mark at this point is with Eve. Anissa doesn't care, and she even forces herself on Mark, leaving him traumatized for many years, unable to even reach out and really tell anyone what happened to him for a long time. Years later, Anissa returns to Earth to help them when Throg's children come to attack. She is changed at this point and regrets what she did to Mark. However, her assault on him also produced a son, and that part she doesn't regret as she loves her and Mark's son, Marcus. Pretty complicated character and villain. Number 6, Evil Marks. When it comes to Invincible, who would be a stronger villain than Invincible himself? Or rather, multiple Invincibles. During the event of Invincible War, multiple Marks start appearing who are all from alternate realities and who are all evil. They have come to destroy Invincible physically and mentally, also destroying his reputation as a hero. In fact, that's kind of the main point of them being there. Many of these evil alternate versions of Mark end up dead following the events of Invincible War, but also costing the lives of many of Earth's heroes in the process. The remaining 8 end up being sent to a dead Earth reality, where the Earth there is filled with nothing but dust and hot sand. Stranded here with no food, they are forced to fight and consume one another for nourishment. In the end, only 2 evil Marks remain, Mohawk Mark and Yellow Cape Mark. Yellow Cape Mark could likely be considered the most powerful of all of the evil Marks, as while both have survived this far, Mohawk Mark is even frightened of Yellow Cape Mark. Number 5, Angstrom Levy. Angstrom Levy is really just a man who loves science, but unfortunately he saw Invincible as his opponent and nemesis due to a misunderstanding where he thought that Mark had actually interrupted an important and lifelong experiment in the process, leaving him injured. Levy then sought to destroy Mark because of this, and using his multi-dimensional knowledge and ability to travel to alternate universes using portals, he pulled together an army of evil Marks to help him. In the end, Mark would believe that he killed Levy, but would later learn that Angstrom had actually survived, being patched up by the technicians as well as given cybernetic enhancements that increased his power. Angstrom's weakness, though, would ultimately be his memory, as it wasn't actually Mark who had truly interrupted his experiment, but himself, who removed his multiversal device before his experiment had been complete, because Invincible had showed up but was actually about to die. Levy had actually removed the device not wanting Mark to be killed, that's why he took it off. This revelation would cause Angstrom to question all of his actions thus far and ultimately surrender to Invincible in the end, defeated by his own lack of memory. Number 4, Robot. While Robot might have the most heroic intentions, you cannot deny that in the end he became a villain himself. In fact, he was only successful as a villain because his intentions were so heroic. His goal? World domination. But why would a hero strive for such an antagonistic goal? Because he knew if he were in charge and completely undisputed as the world's leader, that he could make changes that would greatly improve all lives on Earth. Robot is not actually an AI-powered android, he's a super genius who was originally malformed and unable to survive in the outside world until he created for himself a new, more stable body. He had got a taste for global leadership during his time stranded with Monster Girl in the Flaxen Dimension. Together, they conquered the Flaxen Empire and became its leaders. When they returned to Earth, Robot saw the possibility to turn Earth into a paradise in a similar fashion. But of course, there were many that he would have to get out of the way first. Number 3. Conquest. Conquest is one of the scariest villains out there. Why? Well, because his introduction shook up the narrative. For many, his arrival proved to be one of the scariest of all of the villains in the Invincible universe. This was a guy who enjoyed violence and fighting for the sake of it, and unlike Battle Beast, no fight was ever seen as below him, so he wasn't a villain who would give up. Conquest would fight to the point that his face was unrecognizable and would still come back for more. Initially, it appeared as though he'd killed Mark's partner and love, Adam Eve, which also gave us another shocking, jaw-dropping, fear-riddled moment. Not just for us as readers, but for Mark as Invincible as well. Don't worry, Eve's okay. Spoilers. Number 2. Battle Beast. Battle Beast is one of the most fierce and powerful villains around. His backstory starts off with him being a fearsome warrior and hero who himself was kind of like a guardian of his own planet. And after finding every opponent he came up against disappointing, he decided to leave and traverse the galaxy in search of someone who would be worthy enough to face him in battle, and ideally best him. Every world he went, he brought destruction and death to, unable to find the perfect nemesis. No one was strong enough to beat or to defeat him, including Earth's own heroes, who almost died trying. Would Battle Beast ever find someone who was worthy of battling him? Would Battle Beast ever find love? I'm just kidding, he doesn't want to love. He doesn't want to love his nemesis, although I'm sure there's an element. I feel like there might be an element there. Number 1. Throg. Thrag or Throg or however we're gonna say it. We'll know when he shows up in the animated series. I like the way Throg sounds, so I'm gonna go with that. But if you say Thrag, that is totally cool. Throg has to be up there as one of the most all-time powerful villains, not just in Invincible, but maybe in comics in general, especially in terms of a one-on-one battle. Throg was the villain to defeat one of the strongest villains in the world and live to tell the tale of it. He ended up fighting Battle Beast, and after days of fighting and both of them being disemboweled, won. Now, of course, Battle Beast did choose to fight disemboweled due to Throg becoming disemboweled during the interim of their fight. But Throg also had to fight like that, and even defeating a disemboweled version of Battle Beast is very impressive. Because hey, that guy is nuts! Throg took Battle Beast's fur or his coat or his skin after the fight and had it turned into like a cape to remind him of his awesome victory. He wore it.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Maestro. The Maestro first appeared in Hulk Future Imperfect. Now this is a crazy version of the Hulk, of course from an alternate future, 100 or so years later. Now this is after the world has fallen apart due to a nuclear war. Nearly every superhero had been killed off at this point. It was a grim future, that's for sure. Now radiation was killing off average Joes like us, but for the Hulk, I mean, he just absorbed all of this. He got stronger, and dare I say it, he got smarter. The only way to defeat this older, now bearded Hulk was to go back in time using Doom's time machine and using that first gamma explosion to wipe him off the map so he never existed. I hope we can see this guy in the MCU. He can connect with astral beings, so maybe Strange will have him in some alternate reality in the next Doctor Strange sequel. Fingers crossed, I'm hoping.
And at 9, Gore. Gore, also known as Gore the God Butcher, was born on a planet with no name. Almost every day was spent starving with no food. He was taught to trust in the gods, but they never answered his prayers. At an early age, his mother and father died, leaving Gore to fend for himself, which sucks even if you aren't on the brink of starvation. Years later, he married and fathered some children. However, most of them died. Man, this guy has a great life. Gore's pregnant spouse Aura was also killed during an earthquake, and one by one his children started dying off until he was left with his one son, Agar. He lost faith that the gods he was taught to trust even existed, but when he learned that they did in fact exist, he sought to punish them for not saving his family, despite his desperate pleas. Which I guess is an understandable reaction, but if I found out gods like Thor, Odin, and Zeus and Hades actually existed, I wouldn't think that they could hear my prayers. Cause Even if they're gods, they're still, in a way, people, right? Plus, a god killer, it's very forward thinking.
Number 8, Ravonna. AKA Terminatrix. Okay, Ravonna Renslayer made her first appearance in Marvel Comics with Avengers issue 23. She was the daughter of King Kirilius, a ruler in the 40th century. It was the last civilization that wasn't conquered by Kang at this point, but Kang spared them because he caught feelings for Ravonna. Can't help it, you gotta follow the heart. She refused to share the love because he wasn't royalty, but he was determined to win her over. He was so determined that he summoned the Avengers to that timeline just to fight them and embarrass them, and then in turn impress her. Now it worked because in the following issue, when everybody's making a run for it, she can't leave him. Kang knows even this is a bad idea, but love is love, baby. You gotta do what you gotta do. So if he marries Ravonna, Baltag will go against him with Kang's troops, and Baltag did do this. And when he attacked Kang, Ravonna jumped in the way using her last breath to tell Kang she indeed loves him. Cut to Avengers issue 267, Prime Kang was able to go back in time and save her. He altered reality so another version of him died instead of Ravonna. How sweet / confusing. Ravonna's awesome. We get to see her in Loki, and I'm really hoping we get her alternate side as well, the Terminatrix. She's much more of a big deal than the show has revealed yet. She once disguised herself as Nebula in order to infiltrate the Council of Cross-Time Kangs. She's kind of a big deal.
And it's 7 Kron Stone. Kron Stone is actually the son of Tyler Stone and the older half-brother of Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, as revealed later on in his series. Kron became a violent person after years of suffering not at the hands of his father, but rather an android housekeeper. Yeah, this dude thought their robot maid was so bad that he went nuts and ended up killing Punisher 2099's family, the Gallows family. This was also before gaining superpowers, since after nearly getting killed by Jake Gallows, the Punisher of 2099, Kron fell into a sewer and floated into this strange black ball. This black ball was somehow the mutated form of the Venom symbiote that had survived without a host for all this time, I guess. The symbiote bonded with Kron and they became Venom 2099. This new version of Venom had also gained acidic blood and saliva, so that's a pretty gnarly power right there. So safe to say Venom 2099 is a pretty futuristic version of the symbiote, especially if you look at him. Hot damn.
Number 6, Chronarch. Not to be confused with the 64th century ruler from DC Comics, Chronarch was once a regular man, and he first appeared in Defenders Volume 2, Issue 12. He was a janitor working for a research group who, of course, spilled something that changed his life forever. He spilled something on the Chronoscepter, so in turn, it opened up this time vortex, and out came, you guessed it, dinosaurs. Yeah, dinosaurs that he could control. So yeah, I had to include this villain. This guy is nuts. The Chronarch then made a cool suit of armor, of course, to fit the whole theme. And then he set up a camp in an abandoned theme park and ran operations until the Defenders showed up to save the day. Now, I'm upset here because the Defenders sent the dinosaurs back to their time, their doomed timeline, which we all know, instead of just opening a Jurassic Park. Come on guys, think, profit. Come on, you're Marvel, you're Disney, you like money, do this.
Halfway through into number 5, Technarchy. We all love a good alien invader storyline. They always give us ideas of what to do and what not to do if we ever end up in the same situation making first contact. However, in Marvel's 2099 series, one race of aliens known as the Technarchy is not only a badass name, but the absolute pure definition of demonic cyberpunk, and I think that at this point you can see why. This race of aliens are cybernetic, shape-shifting, and giant techno-organic entities that love violence as all higher life forms do. They were created by the Phalanx, another alien race, but since they love violence, they also hate their creators just for the sake of it. It's so bad in fact that they don't even consider them their creators, and rather just a sucky version of their own species. Yeah, these aliens are racist. And they can also infect organic beings with a techno-organic virus that turns organic matter into technology that I'm guessing they then consume. This is actually insane, but they're my new favorite alien race.
Number 4, Czar. Spider-Man and Wolverine, the Dream Team, involved in a pretty intense storyline. The 2010 six-parter written by Jason Aaron begins with the Orb robbing a bank, which I gotta say would be the weirdest and scariest deposit ever. Spider-Man and Wolverine are on the scene and things seem manageable at first, but when a bag of stolen glowing diamonds hits the ground, the daring duo are transported 60 million years back in time. Wolverine knows after taking one breath that this is not sabotage, Savage Land. Now they're hanging out and an asteroid is heading for Earth. So much later, when Peter has now grown a beard in this altered timeline, Wolverine is also leading the group, the Small Folk. The diamonds activate again, and this time they're shot into the future. What is going on? Okay, so in issue 2, the orb asked Peter about the diamonds. These diamonds belong to the Tsar. He had them attached to his teeth, real fashionable, real gangster-like. He also has a bat with those diamonds embedded in them. So he has arguably the most dangerous weapon I've ever seen. A bat with time-traveling diamonds sticking out of them. Okay, RIP. His sidekick, Big Murder, was also pretty fashionable. He rocks the Kanye glasses while commuting through the cosmos. It's a pretty good duo. I would never want to fight these guys in any reality, especially not the future.
Getting close to the end into number 3, Electro 2099. You want futuristic villains? One look at Electro 2099 and you'll be ruining your pants in more ways than one. Electro 2099's origin is the most future thing you could get, with his original form being a robot construction worker. But this robot's creators became frustrated and unsatisfied with his work, so they sent him to a robot torture experimenter. Yeah, this is starting to sound an awful lot like my trigger and I don't like that. But the torture this android went through, however, broke his obedience chip, and as such the laws of robotics went out the window. This android then gained sentience and the ability to harness and siphon electrical energy, turning him into the new Electro. He also ended up joining the 2099 version of the Sinister Six. This is absolutely ridiculous to me. Like, why would you send a robot who isn't doing their job properly to be tortured? Why would you just not fix their coding or whatever it is in 2099? This is why AI is a bad idea. I'm telling you. However, he does look badass.
Number 2, Ultron. Making his first appearance in Avengers issue 54, Ultron in the comics was originally made by Dr. Hank Pym, but of course he became sentient and turned into a big brass bully. Ultron in the MCU wasn't nearly as cool as the comics, specifically the Age of Ultron storyline from 2013. The story opens up with the world gone dark. Spider-Man is kidnapped by a gang, Hawkeye performs a daring rescue, and then the two then meet up with the rest of the Avengers, or rather, the remaining Avengers ever. That's it. This future is dark and riddled with Ultron drones. Population is running real low. It's a stressful time. Ultron is ahead of the game here. Literally, he uses vision as a conduit to communicate with the past. He resides in the future comfortably and remains a ruler. This is one of my all-time favorite comics. The team goes back in time to talk to Pym, but Logan has other messy intentions. It's a ride. You must check it out.
Finally, in at number 1, Kang the Conqueror. You knew it was gonna happen. Nathaniel Richards was born in the 30th century of Earth 6311, a reality where humanity never went into the Dark Ages. After centuries of advancement in warfare, peace was brought to the land by a time traveler from Earth 616 named Nathaniel Richards. Because Richards brought peace to this war-torn future, he was known as a legend. The Nathaniel Richards born to this reality, though, is said to be a distant descendant of Reed Richards, although other records also indicate that he may be a descendant of the Latvian monarch known as Dr. Doom. Or maybe some of the shippers are right after all. At the age of 16, intervention from his future self as Kang the Conqueror resulted in a young Nathaniel trying to prevent his eventual transformation into Kang the Conqueror, briefly becoming the young hero known as Iron Lad. The kid also briefly had a stint as a supervillain known as Kid Immortus. Basically, there are infinite versions of this character and all of them seem to have some form of beef. This is supposed to be the next main villain of the MCU apparently, and hot damn, is this about to get crazy, as I'm sure you can already tell.
Kicking off the list at number 10. Kang the Conqueror. Also known as Nathaniel Richards, Kang the Conqueror is actually already cast in the live-action MCU, with Jonathan Majors set to play him in Ant-Man 3. But who is Kang? Why is this such a big deal? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on pretty much any superhero. He's insanely smart, and of course he travels with armies, hence the toughness behind them. Now these armies are built in a similar fashion sense, each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry. The time travel stuff doesn't come without consequence though, as Kang travels more and more through time. He creates time-displaced duplicates. And as we saw in Avengers Endgame, it can be quite tricky to figure out how to fix time. I think this is the perfect time to introduce a time-hopping villain, especially for Ant-Man, who's now a big-time Avenger who's been around the quantum block a few times. What do you guys think Kang's goal is going to be in Ant-Man 3? Do you think he's going to clean up these timelines, or do you think he's just pissed off and now he wants to just attack anybody who's messed with the quantum realm? Let us know what you guys think in the comments. We love hearing your feedback as well. And before we head on over to number number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video, that would help out a lot at the studio. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. And let's keep on going with this list. Number 9, the Magus. Making his comic book debut in New Mutants issue 18, the Magus is a powerful enemy of Adam Warlock. He travels alongside Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy comic books, and in one of the many after-credit scenes for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Adam Warlock's name was briefly mentioned. Now this is important because the Magus is actually an enemy of Adam Warlock. He's a tyrant and a god, and now he appears as a ghostly form because, well, he's an evil version of Adam Warlock from the future. Crazy. So Adam Warlock was created by the Enclave when they were trying to create these perfect invincible beings. They created Adam, and we see this in one of those after credit scenes where she goes, "I shall name him Adam." And then everyone in the theater knows what's coming, they know what's coming up. It was exciting, it was a big moment. So Adam, during his travels, runs into the oppressive Universal Church of Truth and their god being the Magus. He was then shocked to see that the Magus is a dark, twisted version of himself, obsessed with the Infinity Stones, much like Thanos' desire. So could we see Adam come out of his glowing birthing pod and stir up some more Infinity Gem madness in the MCU? Yes, let's hope so. I think if the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 wasn't delayed or pushed on to later, we would have seen this already in motion, maybe in WandaVision. Number 8. Taskmaster. He's the big bad villain coming with the Black Widow movie, which we're still eagerly awaiting for. But just who is this hooded, shadowy fighter from the trailers? Taskmaster made his comic book debut back in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters, he is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who turned into a mercenary and assassin. And his whole thing that makes him special is that he can replicate your physical skills. He has this photographic reflex memory. So we can watch a video of Black Widow take down some evil henchmen and then bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows that choreography. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains, agents, henchmen, and even some heroes. He learned how to twirl a lasso by watching Cowboys on TV, and he learned how to play basketball by watching the NBA. He's kind of amazing. And he chose to be a villain instead of being an NBA superstar. What a clown. He's quite impressive. I mean, most Hydra agents, AIM troopers, Hellfire Club enforcers, and other big bad groups, they all most likely graduated from the Taskmaster Academy for Henchmen. And I'm super excited to see him in action in Black Widow. I'll gladly wait longer and longer and longer just so I can see him in IMAX hucking a shield. It's gonna be so worth the wait. Mwah. Number 7, Scarlet Witch. No more mutants. The 3 words that changed everything. So Scarlet Witch, okay, we're all counting down the days until the next episode of WandaVision because now it's cooking. Because now we can finally see an evil Wanda Maximoff. More evil than when she was in Ultron. That didn't really, we don't count that. She's the daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, aka Pietro Maximoff. Now, she was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but at one point she did, of course, join the Avengers. She's one of the biggest Marvel characters ever, and during the events of M-Day, she spoke those 3 words, and just like that, a mass amount of mutants were depowered or killed. So after she said those 3 words, that large number that ended up being affected was somewhere around 986,000 people, only leaving a couple hundred mutants left. Now, with the last 2 episodes of WandaVision sneaking up, it's more than likely that we'll see Wanda lean into this villain part. I mean, she's already expanded the Hex to a much larger scale, and now everybody's trapped prepping for the circus, eating swords, talking to the camera, the whole sitcom life, living up the hashtag sitcom life, you know? Tyler Hayward at one point in a previous episode asks if Wanda has a Avengers alias, but they make it very clear that she doesn't. This is almost to remind the audience that she hasn't got a cool nickname yet. So when the name the Scarlet Witch comes in, that'll be a big deal because that'll be her being marked as a villain with the name Scarlet Witch. With this whole Agatha Harkness witch stuff coming into play, I think we're very close to seeing Wanda flip to the dark side. At least for a little bit until Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes out, and then they have to make her not evil and help out and stuff. It's gonna be a whole thing. This is just a start. Number 6, Morgan Le Fay. Medieval witches and alternate timelines. I mean, that should say enough right there. She made her first appearance in the Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955. And Morgan Le Fay is based off of the Arthurian legend, so she's got a little bit of King Arthur, a little bit of evil magic, and 100% reason to remember the name. She's tried to rule the world many times, specifically after the events of Onslaught, where the Avengers go to an alternate Earth, and when they get back in Heroes Reborn, The Return, we have this new world filled with mythical creatures, of course being ran by Morgan Le Fay. Yeah, she got her hands on the Norn Stones and then made Scarlet Witch add her magic to the fun mix as well. So maybe we'll see that come to play as well. We got a lot of playing room with Scarlet Witch, and witchcraft and all that magical stuff. It's gonna be crazy. Number 5, the Kree Skrull Empire. They made their comic debut in Fantastic Four issue 2 back in 1962. A lot of 2s in there. And they made their Marvel Cinematic debut only a couple years ago in Captain Marvel. But who are the Skrulls? Well, they're a race of shapeshifters from the Andromeda Galaxy, and they look like green humans almost, except much more powerful and ferocious. They lived on the homeworld of Skrullos in the Drock system, and I loved watching these guys in Captain Marvel. They were a lot of fun, and it was nice to see them actually not be the main villain in the movie. Usually we have these evil gods or these crazy insane robots, but to see the villains of that movie end up wanting just the same chances of survival as humans made it more touchy, more emotional. You know, they're carrying around kids, just looking after their own. Like, it's nice. It was a nice change of pace. Even for a fake out, it was still rewarding. It was still fun. So yeah, they're expert shapeshifters. They can transform into anything, organic or non-organic, as long as it's solid. They can't adapt to superpowers unless you're a Super Skrull, which, I mean, those guys you don't want to play around with. The Kree Skrull War is amongst one of the biggest threats to the Avengers because they both believe that the Earth is theirs to claim. See, the Kree performed experiments on humans millennia ago, and then they actually caused the creation of Inhumans. And the Skrulls just see Earth as their new homeworld since theirs was destroyed by Galactus. So a good comic to check out with them would be the 1974 storyline, The Kree Skrull War by Roy Thomas. Avengers 89 to 97. Number 4, Doctor Doom. Making his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 5, Victor Von Doom likes to go head to head with the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. He's one of the most popular Marvel villains ever, and he's not easy to forget. Just by looking at him, he's one of the coolest guys, I think. He thinks he's right. He thinks that he'll actually do a good job ruling the world. I mean, he's so smart, maybe he's correct. Maybe he could do it, but he's kind of evil, so we don't want to see it get to that point. He is the ruler of the land Latveria, and he really cares about this place in Fantastic Four 246. We see this compassion come to play in full force. So why the taste for ruling? Where did this all start, right? Well, each supervillain has their own path, and for Victor, that path started turning to the dark side before he was even born. You see, his mother was a Latvian woman, and she liked to get close to demons. I mean, perhaps a little too close. And after Victor was born, she would attempt to tap into these demonic powers herself, and her clan didn't like that, so they took her out. Sad stuff. So him and his dad were like, okay, see ya, this place sucks, we're out of here. Sadly, during this escape, his dad ended up freezing, and then he had to go on by himself as just a young boy. Then he figured he'd try this demonic power tapping himself later on in life, and then with no luck, he turned to his brain power, and then he soon met Reed Richards when he was in school. So that sad origin plus the college hazing, I mean, this is a villain backstory in the making. Number 3, Loki. Arguably one of the finest characters of the MCU, Loki is the adoptive son of Odin, but who are his real parents? Who is he? What is he doing? Why is he like this? Well, Loki was left as a baby. He was abandoned in his homeworld of Jotunheim, and during a battle, Odin had found this lost child and took him on as his own. What a sweet man, what a sweet gentle giant. So we see this play out in the first Thor movie back in 2011. And then when Loki finds out his motives are peddled by being the offspring of an evil frost giant, he gets a little upset, naturally. He always felt different growing up and often looked down on Thor as he got the most attention and love. Must have been those curly blonde waves. I mean, come on. Odin had chosen not to tell Loki about his true heritage, and he raised him as one of his own. And he's the villain that we love to hate. I'm honestly super excited to see the God of Mischief hop around time in the Loki show coming up. We can't get enough Tom Hiddleston as this role, and I'll happily wait week after week to see him cause more MCU mischief. Happily. Number 2, Ultron. In the MCU, Tony and Bruce are the masterminds behind Ultron. But in the comics, it was actually Hank Pym. Ultron made his first debut back in 1968 in Avengers 54, and beneath the Crimson Cowl, we discover that he is indeed Ultron Pym. See, in the comics, Hank Pym was actually the father of Ultron. There are many versions of Ultron, seeing as he constantly wants to upgrade himself to be bigger and badder. He actually has the same brain patterns as Hank Pym, so he figured it needed a personality, much like our MCU version of Ultron is basically Tony Stark, but with jealousy issues and a lot more metal. A good example of his ruling comes from the Age of Ultron from 2013. Like right off the bat, we can see a dark, life-drained world, and Spider-Man wakes up like, What I miss? Ultron is attacking from the future. That's how ahead of the game he is in this comic. And I can't lie, I was really excited for the Age of Ultron movie in the MCU. Like, the trailer made him seem so dark and ominous. Even his voice was badass. And then in the movie, he just sounds like normal James Spader, and he just walks around talking about omelets. There's rumors that he'll return for WandaVision, but I mean, maybe it's best to leave him in 2015, at least for a bit longer. And finally, number 1. Thanos. You know who this guy is, come on. We first saw him in the after credit scene of Avengers 1 and 2, and then we saw him sitting down in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then we saw him snap away half of all life in the universe in Avengers Infinity War. The Mad Titan first made his comic book debut back in Iron Man issue 55. And funny enough, Robert Downey Jr. is 55 years old, so just a coincidence, literally just a coincidence. So we all know how powerful Thanos is with the Infinity Gauntlet, but if you still haven't seen the movie, I'll touch briefly on those. But look, without the Gauntlet, Thanos is still a villain you don't want to mess around with. He is still a Mad Titan. He was born on the Saturn moon Titan, both of his parents were Eternals, and due to the genetic disorder known as the Deviant Syndrome, his mother actually tried to take him out at first sight. So he's got a pretty dark history already. He got payback when he took out his entire family just to impress Death. And then in the opening of Avengers Infinity War, we see Thanos level the Hulk without even using a single stone. That's how strong this guy is. He just, right in the neck, you're done. But then once he gets the 6 Infinity Stones, he has control over each cosmic power. Those of course being soul, time, power, reality, space, and mind. Now after he snapped his fingers and half of all life disappeared, in the comics he does this to get the attention of Death. But in the movie he does so to be a savior, because you know, too many mouths to feed, not enough to go around. I mean, you could just snap some Cinnamon Toast Crunch into everybody's home. That would be a great start, Thanos. Just an idea. Kicking off the list at number 10, the Time Trapper. First appearing in Adventure Comics 317, the Time Trapper comes from the far future. He actually prevented the Legion of Superheroes from traveling into their future using an iron curtain of time. He likes to hang out at his home located safely at the end of time. How neat is that? Kind of similar to Kang. In his first few issues, the Time Trapper was seeking the Concentrator, which was a weapon that draws energy, any energy source in the known universe, together. It's also a pretty big secret as well. The Time Trapper pretended to be the commissioner of the Science Police and tortured the Legionnaires, although they said it was a test in order to gain intel. Now, Lightning Lad knew something was fishy, so he cracked and spilled secrets, false ones of course. So this brought the team to actually figure out how to assemble the real Concentrator. And when an angry Time Trapper returned, he launched a plethora of Dark Stars at the crew, but luckily that Concentrator could absorb any energy source, like I said, so they were blasted out of existence. We're good. The Legion lived to tell the tale, but we just got Kang in the MCU, so I don't think we need another Time Lord showing up. My brain hurts enough already. Give us like 5 years and then bring in some more time stuff. Number 9, Eclipso. Making his first appearance in House of Secrets issue 61, Eclipso was made from God's spirit of wrath. He's the living embodiment of wrath. It doesn't get more menacing than that, folks. He was made to punish the wicked, to clean the world of evil, of course, until the Spectre replaced him. Wrath was driven by anger, whereas vengeance, that required more of a discerning hand. So what happened after was Wrath's physicality was trapped within an all-black diamond called the Heart of Darkness. The Heart of Darkness, kind of like the heart of the ocean, but instead of Rose tossing it overboard, a treasure hunter found it in Africa and accidentally split it into 1,000 pieces, and now we're all. Each of those pieces contained a shard of darkness. So Eclipso figured out a way to possess people through these diamonds, and that first man being possessed was Bruce Gordon. Bruce was a scientist specializing in solar energy, and while he was in a jungle observing a solar eclipse, a sorcerer named Mofir attacked him with one of those black diamonds, and after that, every eclipse, Eclipso would take over Bruce. Unbeknownst to Bruce though, Eclipso would soon learn to bind himself to anybody near any shard that happened to be angry at the time. Nowadays, there's a lot of angry folks, so this is bad news. The entity of wrath possessing anybody who gets upset, that sounds, yeah, just smile and wave, I guess. Just lie. Just lie and pretend you're happy. Then you're good. Before we continue on with this list, if you want to spread the love and hit that thumbs up, it really does wonders for us at the channel. You guys are amazing. Thanks so much for watching. Let's keep this going. Number 8, Justice Lord Superman. Coming from the animated universe, the 2003 Justice League episode titled A Better World showed us one that's rather the opposite. This parallel universe showed Kal-El and the Justice Lord storming the White House after President Lex Luthor had just executed the Flash. Now the team of course wasn't too happy, so Batman and Wonder Woman fought off the Secret Service while Superman told Luthor that he's taken him in. Lex is insane, so he had a button ready that could literally start a nuclear war if it was pressed. And he's threatening Superman, saying that he needs to use deadly force if he wants to save the people. So Superman's like, Okay, and then just eyes glow red, and then he turns them into ashes, just like that. And when Batman and Wonder Woman come back in, it's far too late. Superman just has a smile on his face, and Lex is just a pile of dust. Good times. After this, for the next 2 years, the Justice Lords would rule using violence like it was normal. They saw this and they're like, well, that certainly did the trick. Let's just keep doing that. Justice Lord Superman used his heat vision to wipe out all of Earth's criminals and villains. If we had him in the DCEU, the movie would be a lot shorter than 4 hours. It would be like 36 minutes. Snyder cut, maybe 44 minutes. Number 7, Superboy Prime, another super menace. First appearing in DC Comics Presents issue 87, this version of Supes has more powers and less weaknesses. I'm talking immunity to kryptonite and magic, which is a fantastic combo. He arrived to Earth and was soon discovered by Jerry and Naomi Kent while they were on a hike in a New England seacoast town. They named him Clark, although Clark Kent was the name of a popular comic book hero named Superman. So yeah, Superman already existed on this Earth, so Clark grew up and later attended a costume party at a beach and dressed like Superman. He went to get a glimpse of Halley's Comet and it was all a good time, and then all of a sudden a tidal wave hits, this portal opens up, and the Superman from the comics pops out. Now at the same time, young Clark's powers manifested, and he quickly learned what to do with them in the moment. Superboy then followed that Superman back into the portal to an alternate reality, and he would never be the same again. Crisis on Infinite Earths was this multiversal catastrophe where parallel dimensions were being consumed by the Anti-Monitor, who I'll talk about later. Superboy dove in, joined the fight, but was unable to prevent the destruction of his Earth. So Superboy Prime and other survivors escaped to a paradise dimension that Alexander Luthor Jr. offered. Using crystals, Superboy just relived happy times in this paradise, but eventually he got frustrated and shattered the barrier of reality. He literally punched everything apart. He retconned quite a bit in DC continuity. For example, he brought back Jason Todd, he combined Superman's origins, Doom Patrol was now rebooted, and we had numerous incarnations of Hawkman and the League of Superheroes. I feel like DC could use a big bad Superboy Prime punch to clear up the timeline, but hopefully the Flash movie does that, because this guy is just a little too crazy. Number 6, Brainiac. Another close rival of Superman's, Brainiac made his first appearance in Action Comics 242. This guy right off the bat is a very specific villain. He would love to steal cities. Yeah, watch out for your cities, keep them safe, put them under your mattress. He took Metropolis at one point. This guy's wild. He would use his shrinking ray, shrink your city, and then take them back to his planet. Vril Doc started his days as a scientist, and one day he successfully cloned himself because he needed an assistant, so who better to hire than yourself? He built the spaceship Next and traveled to the cosmos, gaining knowledge and studying alien organisms with the help of his robot drones, and during these travels he came across Krypton while General Zod was still running the show. So of course, this dude shrunk down the entire city of Kandor and studied it in his ship. He made a remote scout unit that believed it was the original Vril Docs, and then it traveled to Earth and took over the body of sideshow mentalist Milton Find, whose stage name was Brainiac. Now it makes sense. Number 5, Necron. Also known as the Lord of the Unliving. Great. Necron made his first appearance in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps issue 2. He's literally the embodiment of death. Necron figured out the land of the living existed after the death of an immortal caused a rift to open between dimensions. So Necron saw all of this life and he was like, this looks tasty. He wanted it. Well, really he wanted to master it and get out of his hell, his literal hell that he was living in. So he resurrected Krona, even throwing in a classy army of the dead to assist in taking down the Guardians of the Universe. Taking them down ended up widening the rift, so it took all the Green Lantern Corps to stop them, but even after winning, countless lives were lost in this fight. Hal Jordan ended up going to the land of the unliving, accepting the possibility that he may just never return, and there he gathered the souls of other fallen lanterns, and it was just enough to fight off Necron and return, with the Guardians sealing the rift promptly afterwards. But like Necron says, you can never defeat death. Back in 2009, it was revealed Necron was behind the Black Lanterns and instigated the Blackest Night event. There he took over the bodies of Wonder Woman and Superman while also bringing back dead heroes to join his side. Number 4, Prometheus. Helmets are pretty important, especially in combat, and especially if one helmet in particular gave you the skills to beat, I don't know, Batman. Prometheus first appeared in New Year's Evil, Prometheus issue 1 back in the late 90s, and at first he was just the son of two criminals who traveled across the US, real Bonnie and Clyde style. But as a kid, he would have to go with them, right? Because they couldn't afford a babysitter. They were rich with like mob money, but they couldn't afford a babysitter. Okay, so eventually the police caught on and they were never seen again. The police killed them in front of the boy, almost like a darker Bruce Wayne origin. So he grew up with their fortune, only it was a stolen fortune. Then he traveled the world, trained as a fighter, trained as a mercenary. He learned a dozen different languages and he was pretty skilled by the end of it. Then he found the ancient city of Shambhala where their monks studied evil. They trusted him and showed him their greatest treasure, which was an alien ship. Not too bad. Their leader was actually an alien in disguise. He landed there, but Prometheus had to kill him to obtain the key to enter the Ghost Zone. The Ghost Zone was this infinite expanse of white emptiness, the space between dimensions. Kryptonians called this the Phantom Zone. And in there, Prometheus built himself a house, a costume, and his first advanced helmet that downloads info to take on the Justice League. He was great, like he shot Martian Manhunter so then he couldn't change, he infected Steel's armor with a virus, he hypnotized Huntress, and he hit Green Lantern with a neural shaft so his ring was useless. He also trapped Zoriel in said Ghost Zone and beat Batman with hand-to-hand combat. Not too shabby at all. Number 3, the Batman who laughs. We've seen quite a few Batman on screen. We're even seeing Michael Keaton return to Gotham in the next Flash movie, which is pretty exciting. But the Batman who laughs, aka the Darkest Knight, might be a bit too hardcore for the theaters. Coming from the Dark Multiverse, first appearing in Dark Days The Casting, created by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, comes a twisted Earth 22 version of the Batman who laughs. The Joker here is insane. He goes on this spree throughout Gotham, just chaos in the streets. He took out Jim Gordon, then he poisoned Batman. It was all bad. And then once Batman was able to move again after the poison had run its course, he broke the Joker's neck, which is already immediately so dark. But even the Joker was prepared after death. After that snap, he let out this toxic breath that let everybody near him get infected, including Batman. Cut to 2 days later, Batman and Superman are talking about what happened, and when Superman tells Bruce that a kid infected by Joker bit a doctor, Bruce ends up laughing, like this maniacal laugh. And he catches himself after, he's like, sorry about that. Superman knows something's off here, but a day later, Bruce called the team to the Batcave and went full-on Omni-Man. He took out the entire team before anybody caught on to his new and violent personality. Number 2, the Anti-Monitor. Making his first appearance in Crisis on Infinite Earths issue 2, the Anti-Monitor was DC's excuse to cut out a lot of fat from the comics, basically. The multiverse was introduced back in the 60s. The Golden Age heroes were residing on Earth 2, and then came Earth 3, and then so on and danforth. So when Crisis on Infinite Earths came around, DC Comics introduced this big bad cosmic villain to set something straight going forward. Clean up the multiple timelines, makes sense. Now it all started when Krona performed this experiment. They wanted to see the origin of the universe, but instead an opposite universe was created, the antimatter universe. Anti-Monitor wanted nothing but death and destruction, and after battling his brother for, say, I don't know, 1 billion years, they both fell unconscious. And then 9 billion years later, they were woken up. When they tried to destroy Earth 1, many heroes lost their lives, and in order to stop that chaos, Superman had to punch them into a star. Who knows, with the Flash opening up the multiversal door, we could see him on the big screen in our lifetime. Maybe. And finally, number 1, Perpetua. Of course, one of the most feared beings in the greater Omniverse. Also known as the First Creator, she made her first appearance in Justice League Volume 4, Issue 8. She was the mother of the Monitor, Anti-Monitor, and World Folder. She was actually one of the hands that created the multiverse, literally. Each member were these celestial beings and they would pass on and their energy would return to the source, but Perpetua was different. She wanted a dark, vicious reality that would live forever. So she created the first iteration of the multiverse using negative crisis energies and then had 3 cosmic children. She was creating an army also to rule over the multiverse, so her children snitched. Yeah, they told the judges of the source, and Perpetua was locked away outside the source wall with her negative energies. But even locked away, she was able to connect to Lex Luthor, who believed freeing her would make him a hero on some multiversal scale. So next time you want to kick somebody out of your party, just banish them to the source wall with their negative energy. That's how he works.
Number 10, the Joker. While the Joker is admittedly just a man, he obviously needs to at least make the cut because, you know, Batman is also just a man, but a powerful one. And while Joker has no superpowers to speak of, unless maybe we count his insanity or his 100% sanity, depending on what you're reading, but even without any true superpowers of his own, the Joker is still the perfect foil for the extraordinary man that is Bruce Wayne and Batman. If there is anyone who has taken Batman close to the precipice when it comes to losing himself to the darkness within, it is the Joker. Batman has been tormented on countless countless occasions by the Joker, and the Joker has succeeded in his plans to do so multiple times, usually in ways that hurt Batman through doing harm to those he cares for, such as when he brainwashed Tim Drake, shot and paralyzed Barbara Gordon, or when he killed Jason Todd. Number 9. Hush. While Hush might not be a villain who gets many wins, he's still one of the most passionate when it comes to his desire to completely obliterate Batman, and it's for that reason that Hush makes our cut. Hush is Thomas Elliot, one of Bruce Wayne's childhood friends, hell-bent on destroying him in adulthood due to his jealousy. Hush doesn't just have that personal connection with Bruce to give him an edge in comparison, he's also managed to manipulate other villains besides, using them as pawns in his own sinister plans to take down Batman and literally proving himself better than them as shown in the War Games storyline. And before we move on to the next number, if you are enjoying this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really does help us out, my friends, and thank you for those who have already done so. Number 8. Talon. There have been more than a few villains who have held the mantle of Talon, among them one of the deadliest being William Cobb. The Talons are the assassins of the Court of Owls who can regenerate and reawaken after years of slumber, seemingly returning from the dead. William Cobb is one of the most seemingly successful among their ranks. He is revealed to be the great-grandfather of Dick Grayson, Nightwing, and to have been responsible, apparently, for the deaths of multiple members of the Wayne family throughout the years. Number 7. The Penguin. The Penguin is not just known as the odd man out in his own origins, but also seems to often be the odd man out here at Top 10 Nerd when it comes to our lists, which is why I thought it was so important to include him here. The Penguin is one of the Batman's oldest villains who has managed to stick around and resurface throughout the years. While he's usually remained more of a supporting criminal role when it comes to more recent Batman history, the Penguin, aka Oswald Cobblepot, has also remained one of Batman's most wealthy foes who uses his money to wreak havoc and create limitless gadgets and weapons, similar to Bruce Wayne himself. It's both his wealth and his knowledge of the criminal underground that make him such a powerful opponent. His ability to manipulate the criminal underworld of Gotham and bend it to his will while also remaining a public figure takes a different kind of strength. Honestly, I would love to see someone like the Penguin return to the spotlight once more as one of Batman's top villains. Number 6. Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight was a villain who posed a pretty huge threat to Batman in the Batman Arkham Knight 2015 video game. He was a frightening foe who had the wits and wealth to get his hands on and reverse engineer many of Batman's gadgets, to essentially put himself on the same level of power as Batman. In the end, the reveal for this character was somewhat disappointing as we learned that Arkham Knight was actually Bruce's former ward and sidekick, dun dun dun, Jason Todd. Jason ended up abandoning his plot to get revenge on Batman, but if he hadn't, he likely would have destroyed both Batman and Gotham in his role as the Arkham Knight. Number 5. Ra's al Ghul. Ra's is known for being one of Batman's most deadly foes and one who is constantly matching and even threatens to beat Batman at times. While Batman is the master of planning with all his contingencies, Ra's has also managed to use this to his advantage, like during the Tower of Babel storyline when he hacked into Batman's files and used his perfect plans for his own machinations to neutralize the Justice League. In Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, Ra's, played by Liam Neeson, also proves how destructive he can be when it comes not just to Batman, but to all of Gotham, as Ra's al Ghul pushes the city to the brink of insanity, encouraging it to tear itself apart from his own influence and impending threats. Number 4. Deathstroke. Deathstroke is one of the most powerful villains for any hero that he comes up against. Slade Wilson is one of the deadliest assassins in the entire DC universe, and when he comes up against Batman, you can bet he'd kill him if contracted to. Deathstroke most recently took out Batman in a fight near the beginning of the Joker War story arc. He left Batman for dead, and Batman was almost wiped out as a result of his attack when combined with confronting the Joker. And let's not forget that Deathstroke wasn't even contracted to kill Batman here, so this wasn't even Slade at his most willful or powerful. He was holding back in that fight. His only aim there was to basically put Batman out of commission for a short while. Number 3. Bane. If we are talking about physical power, then it's gotta be Bane, and perhaps even mental power too. While the Harley Quinn animated series gives us a version of Bane who is not quite as bright and is kind of a lovable oaf, in the comics, Bane is also known for being a genius in addition to his physical prowess. Bane grew up in prison and used most of his time to get fit and study at the prison library as much as he could. When we think of Bane, we usually think of the man who literally took Batman out of commission for quite a while in the comics when he broke his back over his knee during Nightfall, prompting Batman to recruit Azrael John Paul Valley to take over for him in his absence. Number 2. Poison Ivy. Ivy is usually one that gets dismissed when it comes to Batman's most powerful villains, but let's not forget that she can control plants the world over, meaning in essence, she can take control of the world pretty much whenever she wants. During Tom King's run, we saw Ivy get her moment in the spotlight, proving just how dangerous she could be when she decided to take over the entire world and every person on it through plants. Ivy controls the beings of planet Earth, including powerful superheroes like Superman, through veggies that they have consumed as well. Eventually, Batman and Catwoman find a way to get through to Ivy, but this was also during a phase where Poison Ivy was basically slowly transitioning into a reluctant hero role. Imagine if Ivy had really been full-out supervillain at the time, and if Batman didn't have Harley Quinn to help him get through to Pam. Number 1. Emperor Joker. You didn't really think I was gonna let Joker rest so low on this list, did you now? Granted, this point could also technically be combined with Superman villain known as Mr. Mixia's Pitlick, who gave Emperor Joker his powers during that story arc. However, Mr. Mixie isn't really a Batman villain, but Joker is, and when he tricked Mr. Mixie into giving him 99.99% of his power, he ended up becoming one of the most powerful villains ever to take on Batman. In fact, after the events of torturing Batman in his newly reconstructed version of reality, Batman was left a broken man when everything was reverted back to normal afterward, completely traumatized by the experience. Superman literally had to take Batman's memories of this event in order to fix him and make him well enough once more to resume his heroic duties. Number 10. Stunner. Angelina is one we all forget. She was for a time the devoted and loyal ally and girlfriend to Otto Octavius, who used his smarts to create virtual reality tech that allowed Angelina to live through a virtual form, an avatar who is stronger and that Angelina considered was more attractive in comparison to her true biological form. She got knocked into a coma for years following an explosion, and when she awoke years later, she learned that Otto had died, though really Otto had moved his consciousness into Peter's body, becoming Superior Spider-Man. She swore revenge on Spider-Man, not knowing this, and once again took her virtual form of Stunner. Sadly, she was later defeated when her tech was disabled, and Superior Spider-Man created a virtual version of Otto to break up with Angelina. Number 9. Chameleon. One of the Spider-Man villains who I think deserves more recognition is the Chameleon. He's not only a great and powerful Spider-Man villain, but is also one of the oldest ones around, making his first appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1. He's been here since the beginning, baby! Dmitry Smerdyakov is also related to another powerful Spider-Man villain, Kraven the Hunter. Chameleon is in fact Kraven's half-brother. Where Kraven brings strength and hunting prowess to the table as a villain, Dmitry brings intrigue, his intellect, and originally his technology, which was responsible for him being able to transform so perfectly into any person he wished to impersonate. Later on, however, this power was later changed to instead be a power granted through an experimental treatment. He's also been known to slowly kill his victims in an acid bath, and it is their cries for help that helps him to perfect his mimicry of their voice. Number 8. Sandman. One of the most powerful villains around, especially as he can turn into and manipulate sand, just as long as there are no vacuums around for him to get trapped in, which is a thing that has happened in the comics before. Seriously, you can check it out in the original run of The Amazing Spider-Man in issue number 4. Though thankfully years later that was retconned to be a choice and not a weakness of Sandman's. So in reality, no, vacuums aren't that dangerous to the villain, who can not only reduce himself to tiny and deadly particles of sand which he can control, but who can also harden himself to be as tough as a very thick and solid rock face. Sometimes I just think, listen to what you're saying, Amanda. When you wrote that, people are definitely gonna be like, would you just say he can harden himself? But I mean his body, his form, okay? Get your minds out of the gutter. Sandman is powerful because of all he can accomplish in his sandy form, and all he can withstand. He's also played not only the part of a powerful villain and member of the Sinister Six, but has also been a powerful ally to Spider-Man at times as well. Number 7. Kingpin. When it comes to strength and influence, Kingpin is one of the best out there. I mean, or should I say the worst. He's one of the worst. When you think Kingpin, you might think of Daredevil when it comes to his greatest enemy. But although Spider-Man might not be his number one, Kingpin has still been terrorizing the webhead in addition to Matt Murdock since the Silver Age. In fact, Kingpin made his very first appearance in the Amazing Spider-Man comic issue number 50 in 1967. How about that? Kingpin is not only physically strong, but is also known for being a criminal mastermind with enough influence that even locking him up can't stop him. He's just got that much clout and that many connections. Number 6. Rhino. One of the Spider-Man villains that we often forget but who is exceedingly strong is Rhino, Alexei Saitsevic. He himself is a hard hitter in Marvel Strike Force though, so if you are working on that Sinister Six build, then he might be one of the first to come to your mind when we talk about powerful Spider-Man villains. Rhino got his powers from exposure to a combination of gamma radiation and chemicals. This granted him super strength, and while he's often depicted as being not quite one of the brightest of all the villains, he still packs quite the punch with or without his Rhino armor. I gotta say though, when I think of Rhino, I still think of him first as a guy who looks like he's running around the city in a Rhino onesie, like in the 60s Spider-Man cartoon. Number 5. Carnage. I was actually tempted to put Carnage even higher on this list because he's just so powerful. Cletus Cassidy might be dead inside, literally. Cletus Cassidy might be dead inside, but he still managed to live on throughout the absolute Carnage story arc and become reinvented as an even more terrifying villain once bonded to the Grendel symbiote, becoming not just Carnage, but Dark Carnage. And yeah, he was ultimately defeated, but hey, what a ride it was. Carnage not only terrorized Venom, aka Eddie Brock, and his son Dylan, but he also managed to kick the butt of both Spider-Men, both Peter Parker and Miles Morales. Let's also not forget that when Carnage first appeared, raining down destruction and chaos in the comics, Spider-Man also needed to team up with Venom to even stand a chance against the villain. Number 4. Norman Osborn. While Norman Osborn might not be the most physically powerful of all Spider-Man's opponents, he is definitely one of the most powerful in terms of influence and genius. One of the most influential villains of all time for sure. Norman Osborn has definitely caused Peter and many adjacent loved ones and allies the most grief and pain over time. Norman is also so powerful that he moved from being solely a Spider-Man villain to an Avengers villain and really kind of an all-heroes villain during the Dark Reign storyline, which is pretty impressive. Number 3. Morlun and the Inheritors. Now I know some people are not going to like me putting Morlun this high on the list because I know there are some out there who detest both him and the Inheritors, but I truly believe that he deserves this spot along with his family of alternate dimension Victorian energy vampires. Yeah, I said it. They're kind of weird, but so what? I personally think that that's always been part of the charm of both Spider-Man and Batman's rogues galleries, and what makes them both superheroes who have some of the best villains out there. They got a lot of weird villains, Morlun notwithstanding. Morlun is an energy vampire who, along with his family, not only threatened the life of Peter Parker, but just about every other Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and any other spider folks out there. He also showed up in the Spider-Man story The Other and proved not just how deadly he was, but how cruel he was as well, which in terms of ranking powerful Spider-Man villains should earn him bonus points, as those two seem to go hand in hand. Cruelty usually comes with power in these stories. Number 2. Null. Null is coming, and he's not just coming for Venom, he's coming for everyone this time around. Still, originally Null was a cosmic god and villain intrinsically tied to Venom in the comics, and he was asleep, so he was a villain who not everyone had to worry about, cause you know, he was snoring. But Null being a Venom villain means that he is therefore part of the Spideyverse in comics, as Venom comes from Spider-Man comics originally. All in all, Spider-Man's world just keeps growing and expanding every year, especially as more and more are getting that additional symbiote fever. Null is known as the first god of the Abyss, the god of darkness and symbiotes. He is the creator of symbiotes, and we've watched here and there as now that he is awake, he's racing across the galaxy, raising planets and bringing darkness wherever he goes. He's heading for Earth, and he's likely going to end up being one of the greatest threats Spider-Man, Venom, and all of our Marvel heroes have ever faced. Number 1. Mephisto. Mephisto is one of the most epic Spider-Man villains and is definitely one of the most powerful ones around. Mephisto is a universal constant and has the power to do things like alter history. He saved Miles' friends in exchange for one life that Miles had previously saved. He saved Aunt May in exchange for erasing Peter's marriage from existence. He basically is this all-powerful being that, for almost no conceivable reason, is just super obsessed with spider folks. I swear, I think he just actually wants to be their best friends, but he just doesn't know how because he's like super awkward, so instead he bullies and torments these heroes. Mephisto likely just needs more hugs, but he's still one of the most powerful villains around. Hey, even powerful villains need love.
Number 10. Parasite. First appearing in Firestorm Volume 2 in 1987, Parasite is a twisted, energy-sucking, vampire-like beast who feeds on energy to live. He absorbs the life force of mortals, leaving behind a withered, empty husk. Originally, his need to absorb was satiated with regular civilians, but up against a foe like Superman, his absorption also allows him to sap the powers and memories of his victims. This means he absorbs Superman's powers, but also becomes more deadly every time he goes up against the superhero. He also keeps the knowledge he absorbs during these encounters, meaning he is aware of Superman's secret identity. One interesting aspect of his power, he can only sustain a certain amount of superpowers at one time, or else previous powers will be disabled. This process causes him to go through body changes and power fluctuation. You know, like when you teach a new move to your Pokemon. If that wasn't enough, in his early origin, he had a wife and family he could never touch again, adding a tragic emotional element to this epic villain. Number 9. Metallo. John Corbin was a critically injured man, saved from death by a scientist named Emmett Vale in an experiment that turned him into a cyborg. The scientist was obsessed with the idea that Superman was leading an alien invasion, so when he happened across to John, dying from injuries sustained in a car crash, he takes him back to his lab and he puts his brain into a cyborg body powered by uranium. He then tasks him with killing Superman, and John becomes Metallo, named after the alloy his new form is made with. The uranium core is later replaced with a kryptonite heart to help him kill Superman. With the ability to shoot destructive kryptonite blasts, Metallo knows how to keep Superman busy. At one point, he sells his soul to a demon to upgrade his powers even further. He has incredible abilities granted by his cybernetic body, including enhanced senses and accelerated probability, allowing him to perform quick maths, rapidly processing to predict the most probable outcome of any given situation down to the second. This dude has got a serious hard drive. Hey Nerd Squad, if you like our videos and you want to see more, please take a second to hit that like button, really helps us out. Number 8. Mongol. Mongol first appeared in Adventures of Superman in 1989. He's an evil alien dictator, the tyrannical overlord of War World, an artificial satellite that travels the galaxy collecting slaves for gladiator-style combat tournaments. Superman is picked up and brought to War World, where he wins again and again until he's pitted up against Draga, the undisputed champion of War World. This place is crazy. It's like Rome mixed with WWE, and Superman is Stone Cold Steve Austin. After the Man of Steel defeats the champ, Mongol is not pleased and he teleports down to face off against Superman himself. He eventually knocks Superman unconscious, but rather than instantly killing him while he has the chance, he chains Superman up and prepares to execute Draga, the former champ. Superman breaks out of his bonds and fights back, but Mongol almost blasts Superman into oblivion with his ray blaster on his chest. Superman is saved, however, when a mysterious being named Cleric teleports him off to safety. Mongol nearly defeats Superman, and that lands him here at our number 8 spot. Number 7, Bizarro. Alright, so one time the Joker possessed the 5th dimensional powers of Mr. Mixie, and he created his own insane version of Superman. I'm sure you've heard of him already. Bizarro is like a dark Superman, a shadow self or opposite version of the Man of Steel. The Man of Iron? No, it's already taken. He has mostly the same powers as Superman, except with Arctic vision instead of heat vision, and flame breath, and you get the idea. The original newspaper version of Bizarro included the iconic Bizarro speech patterns, with all Bizarro's comments meaning the opposite of what he says. Having nearly the same skills as Superman, he would be a pretty serious threat to Superman if it weren't for his inferior mind. The people of Bizarro World aren't the brightest. The Bizarro concept has spawned a lot of cool storylines for DC though. You're not a real DC superhero until you've got a Bizarro version of yourself running around. Funny story, Bizarro was once captured and tortured by General Zod, apparently only because he looks like Superman. Number 6, General Zod. Like Bizarro, General Zod is a similarly dark reflection of the Man of Steel. Zod has appeared many times, hell-bent on the destruction of Earth to rebuild Krypton. As a fellow Kryptonian, he has mostly the same powers as Superman, making him an enormous threat to Superman and to the world. He has appeared infrequently since the Crisis on Infinite Earths, a mind-bending event rewriting much of DC's entire history. Zod cares very little about others, including his own race. Everything he does is part of some masterful, self-serving evil scheme. If Superman were to turn evil and attempt to dominate the Earth, General Zod gives us a pretty good idea of what that might look like. Number 5. Darkseid. Darkseid is a tyrannical ruler, dread lord of the nightmare world Apocalypse. He exists outside the normal universe, in a realm known as the Fourth World. He has been called the God of Evil. His goal is no less than conquering all of creation and the entire multiverse. He seeks the anti-life equation, a power that will allow him to turn anyone into a mindless slave bound to him. He once kidnapped Supergirl, using black kryptonite to brainwash her into joining his all-women villain squad, the Female Furies, led by Granny Goodness, the cruel and evil lieutenant. Darkseid is one of the new gods from the Fourth World, who evolved in close proximity to a primeval energy along with superior technology and genetic stability. The people of this realm are immortal, stronger and faster than Homo sapiens, despite looking pretty much the same. Darkseid also wields an ability called the Omega Effect, allowing him to travel through time and space, as well as break barriers and force fields. His main power is his Omega Beam, energy blasts coming from his eyes that are capable of teleporting targets to another universe. He has complete control over his Omega Beams, and they can even change direction in the air. Number 4. Brainiac. Vril Dox, aka Brainiac, is an artificial intelligence created by the computer tyrants of Kolu, a world where knowledge and logic reign supreme. Brainiac was designed to conquer alien worlds, but he quickly became more and more intelligent, eventually becoming a villain that does whatever it takes to acquire more knowledge. He once shrunk down the entire city of Kandor into a miniature for himself to study. He also created a remote scout, programmed to think it was the original Vril Dox. This scout came to the Earth and took over the body of a mentalist named Milton Fine, who worked under the alias Brainiac. Generally believed to be the most intelligent being in the DC universe, he possesses a 12th level intellect, making him even smarter than Lex Luthor. Interestingly, he was once defeated in the past through a sensory overload. Superman forced him into Earth's atmosphere, and he became overwhelmed by the germs and microbes of the Earth, as well as the wild sights and sounds of human society. Number 3. Doomsday. Doomsday was created on Krypton in the distant past, long before Kryptonians had dominance over the planet. In this early day, Krypton was a violent hellscape where only the strongest creatures survived. Doomsday was created by a scientist named Bertron, who was trying to create the ultimate life form. His first experiments failed, and the test subjects dying on Krypton. Bertron cultivated cells from the dead test subjects and infused them into the next one, repeating the process over 40 years. The life form possesses the genetic memory of its previous forms, and therefore is immune to being killed in any way that it has died in the past. Unfortunately, this also resulted in the ultimate survivor becoming a relentless killing machine. Eventually, Doomsday confronts his creator and destroys him, escaping from the wastelands of Krypton. He has sharp, protruding bone claws and a whole host of superpowers, including most notably the ability to adapt to any attack. Doomsday and Superman once had a lengthy, violent fight in Metropolis that ended with what was assumed to be the death of them both. Number 2. Lex Luthor. Lex is undoubtedly one of Superman's greatest foes. A brilliant scientist and billionaire philanthropist, he is powerful and creative. He despises the Man of Steel for his alien heritage and considers him a threat to all of humanity. Over the years, Lex has been around, once even becoming president. He even had a position on the Justice League in the past. There's a genius dynamic between Lex and Superman, with Superman being an alien and achieving things that humanity never thought possible, and on the flip side, Lex Luthor is like peak human success. He's brilliant and rich and successful, but too arrogant and self-interested to use his gifts to benefit humanity. He was once reborn inside an immortal half-Martian, half-human body, and in this form was known as Apex Lex and was immensely powerful. Apex Lex can travel across infinite realities. He is vulnerable and nigh omnipotent, wielding the 7 dark energies of the universe. This guy was dangerous enough before. Luthor's combination of hatred towards Superman and near limitless power potential land him here at our number 2 spot. And now, number 1. Batman. Batman is a bit of a problem for Superman. Not only does Batman always carry kryptonite on him, just in case, but Batman is also the kind of dude who just does what he wants and is pretty hard to argue with. Batman and Superman have gone head to head many times in the past, with different results, but it's worth noting that Batman has defeated nearly every iconic comic character within recent years. It has also been said that Batman could defeat anyone given enough prep time. Similar to Lex Luthor, Batman is also a billionaire who isn't too thrilled about an alien flying around and destroying buildings with his superpowers. Superman versus Batman. These guys are two sides of the same coin. They want the same thing, but have very different ways of achieving it.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Matthew Malloy. While we're eagerly awaiting the arrival of mutants into the MCU, there's quite a few mutants that I wouldn't want hanging out near Peter, Ned, or MJ, like Matthew Malloy, for example. See, Matthew was a regular Joe living in Charleston, South Carolina, but all of a sudden Earth gets hit with a Skrull invasion. Gotta love Mondays in the Marvel Universe. Sick. Things escalate when his wife Jules is vaporized by a blast from said Skrull ship, and his home was also just toast. Just a complete tragedy from the start. Now, one depressing, dark, lonely year later, he sees his late wife's sister, and they finally catch up. And it's hard for Matthew, of course, to talk about this stuff. This is still just a year ago, so it's all very fresh. So he's feeling it, and that's when his mutant powers decided to manifest. He erupted with energy, sadly also ending the life of Jules' sister. Not looking good so far. And then while he's standing there in shock, Maria Hill's hologram shows up out of a drone, and she's like, "Are you okay? Are you a mutant? What are your powers? What's going on? Do you have Geico?" He's a little stressed out on what's happening, so he freaks out a little more. So she sends in a strike team, and this just caused him to release even more energy and take even more lives. S.H.I.E.L.D. ended up sending in an airstrike, and that ended the lives of Cyclops, Magic, and Matthew, but those powers were better than we thought, because Matthew came back to life. Immortality for the win. Next, he teleported to the Jean Grey school, where he then took the life of Emma Frost. Now, Tempest at this point decided the only way to take care of this beyond Omega level threat was to go back in time and make sure his parents never meet. Then we can avoid having this supervillain from exploding over and over again. There's a link there, page 10. Mutants are cool and all, but this is evidence of how a regular guy can be riddled with tragedy in the Marvel Universe. Imagine if Zemo got these powers, Civil War would be over in like 22 minutes. Number 9, Molecule Man. Owen Reese started his days out as a small, puny, ridiculously looking laboratory technician whose life changed forever one day at work. Also, that's how the Watcher described him. I'm not being mean. He's breaking down his origins to the Fantastic Four, and he's low-key roasting the guy the entire time. It's pretty great. He was working for Acme Atomic Corp, but one day he got distracted and made a mistake while making adjustments to that atomic machine. He was distracted because he was monologuing about how much his life sucks. He was like, "Oh, I'm just a nobody wearing green pants at work, boo-hoo, no one knows my name." And then in the middle of his pity party, he gets blasted with energy, but somehow he survives. His boss of 12 years calls him in the office, and he's like, "Hey, I heard about your accident, Mr. whatever your name is. We can't have that happen here. You're fired." Which, first of all, as far as lawsuits go, could you imagine? But Owen doesn't pack up and leave. No, instead, he pulls out a wand that can control his powers, and he turns Boss Man into a snow cone. He can now control every molecule in the universe, and like Reed Richards says, if a man can control molecules, he can control anything. Guy's really brilliant with that groundbreaking assessment. Thanks, Reed. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It's a lot of dark, tragic stuff going on here, so let's brighten the mood a little bit by doing a little hitting that button. Thanks so much, you guys are the best. Back to this list. Number 8, Mad Jim Jaspers. Old Jimmy J. Okay, he made his first appearance in Daredevil's number 7 back in 1983. He was created by Alan Davis and Alan Moore, and when he first hit the pages, he was a British politician serving as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He was serving as a member of Parliament for Haslop West, and he wasn't a fan of superheroes either. He wanted to keep Britain safe, and superheroes crashing through buildings and punching each other in the back, no thanks. Sounds like the opposite of safety. They're old school, I get it. But he also wasn't alone. Many others agreed with him, and in turn, he won a general election. Only 2 issues after he's introduced, we find out he's a mutant with reality warping powers, who of course is also insane. He was just taking out other heroes so that he could rule secretly. Classic little twisty twist. He created and used this machine called the Fury, which hunted down superhumans. Meanwhile, he would be off committing crimes with his Alice in Wonderland themed gang. I know Disney loves crossovers, but I think this would be a little too weird. Number 7, Mephisto. In a list of villains too powerful for the MCU, clearly Mephisto is on that list. We thought he was going to be the one pulling the strings in WandaVision, but as the catchy theme song revealed, it was Agatha Harkness all along. Mephisto made his first full appearance in Silver Surfer issue 3, and he's been making deals with everybody since. Like when Spider-Man revealed his identity in the Civil War storyline, that led to a bullet striking Aunt May, so he offers Peter a deal while Aunt May is dying in the hospital. The world will forget Peter Parker is truly Spider-Man, but in turn Mephisto gets his marriage. It's kind of like Shrek 4, but way more fun. And this movie's probably gonna make way more money than Shrek 4. I mean, maybe, hopefully, I hope. You don't even need to be a superhero to have an eventful night with Mephisto either. Like in Journey into Mystery issue 627, he would show up to a random pub and he tells the bartender a story, and if you listen to his tale, he'll give you a nice fat tip. But if you slip up, things can get pretty ugly. Next time you get that really annoying regular at your bar, just think, it could literally be the devil and be a lot worse. Consider yourself lucky. Number 6, Vulcan. The younger brother of both Cyclops and Havoc, Gabriel Summers made his first appearance in X-Men Deadly Genesis. Before Catherine Summers even had a chance to give birth to the 3rd child, he was transferred into an incubation accelerator, so he grew up real quick. After this, he was sent to Earth to work for Eric the Red, but luckily he didn't stick around to let that happen too long. He changed his name quickly from Gabriel to Kid Vulcan, which sounds way cooler already, but it was also inspired by Roman mythology. I guess the other names already belong to DC characters. But Xavier eventually met him, and because of his mental powers, he knew that this boy was a relative to the Summers family. Vulcan had forgotten about his history at this point as well, but he suited up with Petra, Darwin, and Sway, and together they rescued the original X-Men. It wasn't easy though. Cyclops thought Vulcan had died when the island decided to fight back. Vulcan is an Omega level mutant, and he's also insane. What a jazzy combo. Vulcan can manipulate, absorb, and control energy. This includes Cyclops' optic blasts or even Adam Warlock's energy. And of course, interstellar flight makes those cosmic commutes nice and smooth. Number 5, Onslaught. Making his first debut in X-Men issue 15, Onslaught was a sentient psionic entity created from the minds of Charles Xavier and Magneto. So when the X-Men were fighting the Acolytes, Wolverine hit Magneto, and then in turn Magneto ripped the adamantium from his bones, which I've mentioned on other lists before because that's one of the more painful encounters I've ever seen in comic books. His healing factor then had to work overtime, and Xavier at this point decided it would be the right move to just shut Magneto's mind down, so then he made him catatonic. But during this exact moment, all of Magneto's lust for hate and violence leaked into Charles' subconscious, creating this new personality, Onslaught. Onslaught is quite lucky, because now he gets to tap into the psychic resources of the astral plane, where he can manipulate matter and energy. I mean, let's get X-Men into the MCU first, and then we'll start talking about evil mashups and swaps. Number 4, Mojo. Making his first debut in Longshot issue 3, Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. Just like the team over here at Top 10 Nerd, the more views he gets for this interdimensional TV show, the more powerful he gets as well. So if you didn't hit that like button, now you really have to. So in the 1992 issue titled Mojo's Media Madness, he had this wild storyline where Mojo gets Rogue, Cyclops, Beast, and Wolverine, and they all think that they're characters from The Wizard of Oz. It sounds fun, but for the MCU, this would be way too stupid, dare I say. The comic is crazy enough. I mean, we see his madness really unfold in X-Men issue 10. Mojo is a unique villain. He's part of a race called the Spineless Beings, and they're from a planet named after him called Mojo World inside of a pocket dimension called Mojoverse. It's just all about him, eh? Wow. So this race of spineless beings were also slowly going crazy over time because TV signals from other space-time continuums like ours were scattered into their timelines. He's a powerful sorcerer. We're not exactly sure just how far his magic can go. We'll stick to watching these guys on our TV rather than having them sucked into a interdimensional Netflix, you know? That sounds better. Number 3, Apocalypse. Making his first steps in Marvel graphic novel issue 17 and then making his first full appearance in X Factor issue 5, Apocalypse was born nearly 5,000 years ago at the edge of the Valley of the Kings in ancient Egypt. He was abandoned by his tribe because of the fact that he looked different. He had the Blue Man Group avatar vibe going on, so they left the child. How mean. Later on, he was raised by the nomads with the idea that only the strong survive. So already such a tragic childhood. Now in the desert, along came Baal of the Crimson Sands, leader of the Sandstormers, and he saw this kid crying, and he also saw potential, because clearly he was different. So he named him An-Sabanur, which translates to morning light. He grew up becoming the most feared in the land, and eventually Baal led him to Ramatut's time ship in an underground tomb. Now, Baal didn't survive this cave expedition, but Nur was now determined to be anything but an abused worker. Now he wanted revenge on Ramatut, the pharaoh ruler. And after being thrown into a pit of snakes, Nur grew in size and strength, easily defeating all the guards before finally declaring himself Apocalypse. We had this guy already in the Fox verse, but it didn't feel too great. I think we should let that wound heal a bit before bringing him into the MCU with the X-Men. Maybe like 8 years, then we'll talk. Number 2, MODOK. Making its first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 93, MODOK was created by Dr. George Tarleton. He had worked with the team recently to create the Cosmic Cube, but the scientist supreme, Lyle Getz, figured the next logical step was figuring out a way to understand the powers inside said cube. We see this happen a little bit in the MCU. So enter Project MODOK, yes, spelled with a C at the end instead of a K. That's important, you gotta remember that. MODOK stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Computing. It sounds like a high-tech series, sounds perfect. What a great way to analyze and probe this cosmic cube. So they grabbed that scientist George that I mentioned and altered him into this big-headed supercomputer. That's when things start to go south, obviously. With a brain too big for his body, they had to give him a hover chair, which is referred to as the Doomsday Chair. Already it's downhill. This scientist did not know that with great power comes great responsibility, so it wasn't long before MODOK overtook his masters, changed that last letter from a C to a K, making his new, more suitable name for the list, MODOK, Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing. He's the big bad in the new Avengers game that's not too good, but it's still worth a play, and yes, he's as crazy as it sounds. And finally, number 1, Galactus. Wielder of the power cosmic, this one has to eat planets in order to survive. Yummy. We saw him in Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Well, I mean, we saw a cloud that sort of looked like him, I guess. Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds. Let's talk about him. The Great Destroyer made his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 48. He's the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse. But originally, he was a humanoid named Galan, born on a previous version of Earth called Planet Ta. It was a paradise whose civilization was much more advanced than any other in the universe at the time, which sounds quite lovely. But when the cosmos were soon ending the embodiment of the 6th infinity, the sentience of the multiverse approached Galan and merged with him. So now Galactus resides in the 7th iteration of his universe, which is home to our Earth 616. He's extremely powerful. He once ate all the Infinity Stones, so maybe we'll just keep them hidden in case he's off his desk for now, just to be safe.
Number 10, Kraven the Hunter. Kraven on Earth 1610 is actually the star of a show, following him as he hunts down dangerous and exotic animals. He planned on hunting Spider-Man to improve his show's ratings, but was exposed as a fraud when Spider-Man handily defeated him with one punch. Obsessed with getting revenge on Spider-Man for costing him his reputation, his job, and apparently his wife, Kraven experimented on himself, transforming himself into a lion-like monster. Eventually, he would go on to join the Sinister Six and continue to try to fight and kill Spider-Man. Kraven is a skilled tracker, and after his experimentation had superhuman levels of strength, speed, and endurance, becoming a much more fearsome opponent. Much more fearsome. Number 9, Prowler. Prowler is an interesting villain because when Miles Morales was moved over to Earth 616 after the destruction of Earth 1610 and the amalgamation of the Marvel Universe into Battleworld, Aaron Davis, Miles' uncle, also survived. Aaron Davis used to be partners in crime with Miles' father, his brother, Jefferson. But after the birth of his son, Jefferson decided to go on the straight and narrow, while Aaron continued on with his criminal activities. Initially, Aaron died in Earth 1610 after attempting to blackmail and then kill his nephew, knowing of his true identity as Spider-Man. However, he also found himself returned to life when Miles was moved over to Earth 616. He woke up in bed as though his death had never happened. He would end up becoming a criminal again, recruiting the Sinister Six and fighting against his nephew once more. His antagonism would actually inspire the formation of the Champions. Eventually, though, Aaron would attempt to also give up his criminal ways, being convinced by his nephew that he could do better. And friends, if you love villains as much as I love villains, please show that love by giving this video a thumbs up. Seriously, when you hit that thumbs up or when you click the subscribe, it really does help us out, so thank you for doing it. Number 8, Black Widow. Black Widow was almost one of the most successful villains around. She played the role of hero so well, no one saw her betrayal coming, not even her fiancé Tony Stark. Yep, in this world, Iron Man and Black Widow end up romantically together. However, it's later revealed that this was all part of Black Widow's plan to betray the Avengers and steal Stark's fortune. Mwahaha. Instead of redeeming herself and becoming a hero, Black Widow here remains a villain through and through, and is just pretending to be a hero. She even kills Jarvis! Oh no! But in the end, Stark is able to use the nanotech in her blood, which allows her to control the suit that he made for her as a wedding gift to neutralize Black Widow. Though not in time to save Jarvis, sadly. Black Widow would get hers in the end when Hawkeye found out where she was being kept and killed her as revenge for her orchestrating the death of his family and his own capture and torture. Yeah, Black Widow is really bad in the Ultimate Universe. Number 7, Colonel. The Colonel was Abdul al-Rahman. He was a super soldier just like Captain America and was actually a hero to his own nation. He was part of the Liberators, the same group of villains that Black Widow was allied with. Abdul's powers were comparable to Captain America, as he was also a super soldier. In fact, believed to be the first successful super soldier since the creation of Cap. The Liberators were considered a group of villains by the Ultimates and the USA, but were in reality a multinational group of superpowered beings who banded together in their hopes to even the playing field for the rest of the world by destroying the Ultimates. The depiction of these villains was extremely political, problematic, and even at times racist. But if you consider his motivations and his backstory, Abdul was actually a pretty cool character. To add likely to his evil but badass appearance, he also fought with what appeared to be a double-bladed, well, a lightsaber. Energy blades, I think they're called, that looked very similar to Darth Maul's. Because, you know, Darth Maul's a bad guy, so how do we make Abdul look like a bad guy? Give him the same thing that Darth Maul fights with. What is happening? It's the Star Wars Marvel superhero crossover that none of us necessarily asked for, but there you go. Number 6, Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is the twin brother of Tony Stark. He has less morals than his brother and is a more focused intellectual. Whereas Tony is known for his lavish playboy lifestyle, Gregory is not. In fact, that is one of the many things that Gregory always hated about his brother. He is the older twin, being born 20 minutes before Tony, and is not only more amoral, but is also more intelligent than his brother. Initially, he worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., but this was all part of a carefully planned world domination plot involving in part the overthrowing of S.H.I.E.L.D. superiors, leading eventually to Gregory being put in charge as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Eventually, the Ultimates would learn of his plot and turn on him, defeating and killing him after the nanites in his bloodstream were disabled by his own brother, Tony. Number 5, Modi Thorson. Modi is the son of Thor and Hela. Don't worry, in Ultimates they're not related. Not brother and sister, nor uncle and niece. Still, it's kind of icky to imagine, but Thor was forced to sleep with Hela in order to give her a child, so that in exchange she would return him to Earth so that he could be with Valkyrie. Of course, this didn't end up working out exactly as Thor had planned, because Valkyrie ended up dying and then Thor ended up coming back, so they didn't really get to be together, but hey, good try. When Modi was a child, Thor locked him away for his own protection, but gave him Mjolnir so that he'd be able to escape when he was worthy. After escaping the room he was locked up in, now fully grown, Modi ended up using the Mind Gem to bend others to his will. His plan was to destroy the US and basically rebuild Asgard out of its charred remains, because at this point in time Asgard had fallen, there was no Asgard. Modi even managed to bend his father to his will, but was not successful in controlling the mind of Captain America. In the end, Thor broke free of his son's will and killed him. Number 4, Green Goblin. Of course, Norman Osborn needs to be near the top on this list because, well, he's Norman Osborn. But in the reality of Earth 1610, he's actually even more fearsome than his 616 counterpart. Norman got his powers after learning of the creation of Spider-Man through an Oz formula infected spider. Believing that it was the combination of the Oz formula and spider DNA that granted those spider-like abilities, Norman theorized that combining the Oz formula with his own DNA should just transform him into a more superior version of himself. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out how he planned, and instead, Norman found himself transformed into a demon-like version of himself. This version of Norman comes with super strength, speed, durability, and is virtually indestructible and immortal, in a way that's similar to the Hulk. Every time he dies, Osborn claims he is resurrected. Osborn would also eventually make his way to the universe of Earth 616. But how did he get there? Number 3, Ultimatum. Ultimatum is like the evil version of Miles Morales, but is actually the main continuity version of that character. While he isn't originally from Earth 1610, instead hailing from the Prime Universe of Earth 616, Miles Morales did spend a good amount of time living on Earth 1610. And I mean, his current villain name is Ultimatum, so I feel like he kind of earned a place on our list. Miles was the one responsible for bringing the 1610 version of Norman Osborn to Earth 616, who works for him as his lackey, hence why Ultimatum is higher up on this list. Ultimatum himself doesn't have any superpowers, but does have quite a bit of influence, being an ally of Earth 616's Kingpin originally, and also possesses knowledge of the multiverse. I keep pointing to my head for knowledge. It's just like, yes, Amanda, we know this is where your brain is. We know. Ultimatum also has a pretty sweet suit. Like a supervillain suit, not like a tailored suit. His plan was to take over Brooklyn, make it his own criminal empire, and send the Miles Morales of Earth 1610, Spider-Man, and his family back to their home reality. Fortunately, his plan fell apart in issue 19 of Miles Morales Spider-Man, when he found out he was unable to capture Spider-Man's parents. They're not easy to capture, so I love that he was like, this will work fine. But Jefferson was like, no, get out of here. What are you trying to do? Get out of here. Number 2, Magneto. Speaking of Ultimatum. Okay, so while Green Goblin is mortal and Ultimatum is the boss of Green Goblin, and Magneto is, not necessarily immortal, definitely not immortal, he still has proven to be very deadly in the Ultimate Universe, and it is for that reason that he gets ranked so high up. Just the numbers of lives he took is shocking during, of course, Ultimatum. Magneto killed Professor Xavier and other notable mutant heroes who stood in his way. He killed millions of people worldwide before S.H.I.E.L.D. and the X-Men were able to finally track him down and put a stop to it. Magneto then learned that his beliefs about mutant kind were wrong, and that mutants were created from the hereditary genes passed on from the super soldier serum. They weren't like divine in any way. This broke Magneto, destroying everything he had built his cause around, making him question everything he had done, as he should. In the end, Cyclops killed Magneto, vaporizing him with a powerful optic blast. See? Not immortal. Number 1, the Maker. Likely one of the most powerful and brilliant villains to come out of the Ultimate Universe. Jonathan Hickman, if you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. The Maker is also a fan favorite among comic book writers and readers, so it's easy to understand how he ends up accomplishing so much and becoming so gifted. When we like a character, we want them to do well. When we like a villain, we want them to do bad. Do bad things. To other people, that is. And the Maker in that way does not disappoint us. Initially, the Maker was known as Mr. Fantastic. He is the reimagining of Reed Richards if he were to turn to a life of villainy instead, which ends up happening after the Fantastic Four falls apart. Much of his power comes from his genius intellect and his fiercely and horrifically loyal dedication to the pursuit of knowledge and science. The Maker has his own modified symbiote, is virtually immortal, possesses a genius intellect, and still has his stretching powers. And he's done a lot of stuff.